do you mean my figured fucking recording path could not be opened? Oh, but we are streaming. Okay, cool. So the recording isn't working, but... Hello, VOD. Sorry for that. There's a small technical issue with OBS that means I'm not recording, I guess, but I am streaming, which is the important thing. So bear with us just a moment as we find the most efficient way to deliver this here stream to you guys. Okay, cool. Well, I've done all the pings, so anyone who's going to be here is probably here, more or less. Let me just get this up on my phone so that I can see the chat as well. Bear with us a sec, chatters. Hello. Okay, and I can hear myself through the stream, so that's fine. Cool. Okay, cool. I think that's all. Right. Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. So this is a developer stream for the Burton equation, which was a mod I started making in 2018. Also, yes, I know. Sorry about the background noise. But I was just checking I could hear myself. So this was a mod I made started making in 2018 and finished making last year in, 2024. And I worked on it for on and off, and then really focused it down last year to get it out the door. So, you know, most of the time spent my time focusing on RTBR and that kind of thing, and then last year spent a little bit of time focusing on this. There was also some RTBR developers who assisted with the development of this thing here, and I have some of them with me now, and we expect a couple more to drop in over the course of the stream, so I'll introduce them as they come up. But with me here today is me, Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby. I did the programming. Well, not all the programming, but some of the programming for the Burton equation.
Amy.
Hello, I did some just finalized playtesting.
Dimitron.
Hello, I did the Terminus OST in the 20s boss track.
And Game Boy.
Hello, I just contribute some posters for Miami.
Cool. So we're gonna get on. If there's any technical issues, that like a crash or something, I'm just gonna start up the game and we're gonna pick up where we left off. And yeah, this is with the latest 1.2 patch, which I just put out, which has some quality of life fixes, a few new mechanics, and a few things like source code release and so on. This is also the final patch that Burton Equation will be receiving, so this is the final thing that I guess I'm doing with Burton Equation, and this is this stream right here. So if you do at all have any questions or anything, feel free to leave them in the chat, because here and now is the time to do it. So let's kick off.
Sometimes the places we know the most are the places we like the least. I'm Zachary Burton, police detective. Not that I've had much pride in my job for a long time anyway. The streets have been run by the Metro Gang for 2 years now. Corruption is everywhere. Reports dropped in the trash before they ever make it to my desk. For Bryn Kostrutzi, the head of the operation, he's got dirt on everyone. He never leaves his territory. So here I am, stuck in place, without ever a lead to follow. And that's why I heard out this woman who pranced in my office.
So I'm just checking OBS is... Okay, it is actually cutting off.
Maybe I want to change, or maybe I just needed a
Sorry
free
about
band
that.
to send me on my way. Either way, this process ain't working. It's time to try something new.
Yep. Because I have to stream it windowed, some things may be cut off at the very bottom. So
Let's get my
sorry
hand on
about
my
that.
gun before I go.
I'm also going to throw on the subtitles at this point. Someone asked in the chat, why did the revolver model change? We have a lot to talk about right away, but just asking that, answering that one, in the last year of development, I did a lot of things to kind of, like, try and, I guess, make each era feel more, like, correct. And so, you know, for instance, the 357 Magnum did not exist in the 1920s, right? But I also knew that I wanted his gun to be, you know, classic police revolver thing. And both for, like, the detective vibes and also for that kind of lone gunslinger vibes, because that's kind of a little bit what I was going for. And, you know, the thing is that the 38 Special, I think is a really, like, lame-looking revolver. And it also shoots fairly weak caliber, so I kind of had the idea of making a weird kind of in the middle gun, which I ended up calling the 38 Magnum, and I'll show the design a little bit more in a minute. So the music here is royalty free. Once we get, and that will be true for the 40s as well. Although the boss music in the 1920s was composed by Dimitron, he can talk about that once we get there. And then the 80s music was composed by Slimek, and the music at the end of the final chapter, the Half-Life 2 chapter, was again composed by Dimitron. Cool. So the comics, by the way, were done by a graphics professor by the name of Adam Rogers. And he was a really great guy to work with. He did some really fantastic stuff. He deliberately targeted a different style for each era to kind of go alongside what I had in mind. I have background.
Entity's here.
Oh, there's Entity. Hello. Is it him?
Hey,
Zachary
guys.
Burton himself. Hello. So, this is as good a time as any. We've only just started. Entity 37, aka Sam Warren, aka Zachary Burton, is right here.
Sorry I'm late. I had to fight off a brain. He was giving me a little bit of some trouble earlier, so I'm here.
Cool. Someone
Hey,
else.
guys.
Yeah, go on. Sorry, introduce yourself a bit more. My bad.
No, no. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here, and yeah, no, it's great to. It's just great to be here. Yeah, no, I love the Burn equation. It's a fun thing, and that's pretty much it for me.
Cool. So we'll probably be able to pick your brains a bit about Zachary Burton the whole time we're playing, seeing as he's, you know, the protagonist.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. So yeah, no, absolutely.
Cool. Someone else asked what was the most time-consuming part. Was it the map making or the coding? Definitely the map making. Pretty much all the time went. What are some inspirations? You know, classic, you know, 1920s detective kind of fiction, and also 40s detective movies, the black and white stuff, of course. And then each era obviously has its own inspiration, right? And so the 40s is inspired by old war movies and that sort of thing. The 80s is inspired by, like, Miami Vice, but also, like, Hotline Miami, that sort of thing. And the Half-Life 2 period is inspired by Half-Life 2, but also a little bit, I was going for that sort of post-apocalyptic hero vibe in the same sense as, like, I Am Legend and that kind of thing, right? That was the idea. The writing for Burton in each era, he talks a little differently because the goal was to kind of emulate the heroes of that era of movie a little bit differently, right? So in the 1920s, he's a little bit more verbose, he's a little bit more mysterious and everything. In the 40s, he's a bit more heroic, but also, like, quite serious and down to earth. In the 80s, he's a little bit more kick-ass and, like, let's do this kind of thing because, you know, that's kind of the 80s action movie kind of vibe. And then in the Half-Life 2 period and the 2010s and stuff, he's kind of, you know, he's got a little bit more of that sort of, like, down-to-earthness again, in a sort of a humanity's, you know, had a rough time and someone's got to do something, right? That was the idea. And I think Entity did a really good job kind of adapting to those as well.
Time to hit the streets.
Cool. So this is just another look at the Magnum as a before. As I said, so this one is kind of... So the general silhouette is meant to look kind of like a 38 Special. But then I kind of gave it a slightly bigger barrel and I gave it a bit... It's a bit fatter than a 38 Special and the barrel's longer and so on. The idea meant to be it's meant to look like an upscaled 38 Special that has a little bit more kick behind it, which it should, because, you know, it's his proper revolver. we're heading out here. And something which was probably... The 1920s were probably the hardest chapter to art pass, right? And there's a couple reasons for that, right? One is it's all in black and white. And so color is something that you just get very used to using as part of an art pass. And in art passing the 1920s, I had to rely on contrast more as the art pass resource. So strong lights and that kind of thing. The other thing was the research, right? So I kept using props that I expected to, you know, make sense just in context. But finding they didn't. So for example, things like metal shipping containers didn't exist in the 1920s. And so when I came to doing the container yard later on in the chapter, I realized these had to be wooden, right? Like massive wooden shipping containers instead, right? And plastic bags didn't exist, so these trash piles, which are very great, like, generical props to stick around, I actually retextured them to look like they were made out of burlap instead, so they're like burlap sacks, right? There's a lot of little details like that which became, like, quite important to bear in mind. The other thing, for instance, is graffiti is something we rely on a lot, you know, as Half-Life 2 mappers, kind of just detail a plain wall. But really colourful graffitis and that kind of thing were pretty rare back in the 1920s. And so, when I looked up examples of graffiti, they were pretty much all the kind of quite simple black things, like these shapes here. And so, there are graffitis in Half-Life 2 which match that description, and I used those, but I only really had those and nothing else. Kill these now. So this gangster Metrocop model, the placeholder... Oh, I'm getting shot at. Let me ping these guys first. There we go. Not quite used to using the charge attack yet. Gone to use it a lot yet. Which was done by Abby, actually. So, Abby, do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so the charge attack, well, you can see it right there. You hold right click, you charge up a punch, and it deals increased damage. It's almost functionally identical to a stun stick in R2BR, but with a few minor differences. I think you can hold it infinitely as well, but yeah, it's basically like a similar deal.
Yeah. This was a mechanic that was only added in the 1.2 update. The other one that was added was this one of kicking physics objects, where this is going to break when I do it. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, Abby. And maybe Amy, talk about why we did that. So Abby, you can talk about the programming, and then Amy, you want to talk about where that comes from in the first place.
Yeah, so kicking a physics object, it's just basically like kicking an object that's held in your hand, except as we kick it, or as the kick hits, we basically just force the player to drop the object. It's like, basically what it's doing is it's like, you can do it manually as well, but we found that it's much more fun and a lot easier to just pull off the mechanic if you just like kick it from while you're holding it. And like, it sends it flying, which is really funny to see, and deals heaps of damage as well.
Yeah. Then Amy, where does this come from in the first place?
So this was actually an unintentional feature that became a feature in Salvation for R2BR. So Grigori, obviously in R2BR, it being a Half-Life, a bit closer to a Half-Life sandbox than Burton Equation is. You didn't have like the gravity gun, obviously, and Half-Life being very physics manipulating, and that being a big core part of the sandbox, you needed some way to punt things at enemies, especially in Ravenholm. So that became an accidental feature that became really, really just fun overall, being able to like punt a cinder block at like zombies and stuff. And obviously, the kick being in Burton Equation, it becomes a good feature to use here as well, because obviously this is another physics sandbox that didn't have a physics manipulator. So being able to kick a table at somebody and that just send them flying, especially with the more bombastic and kind of cartoony amount of just power behind Burton's kick it makes it even better. Yeah, basically it's Burton's gravity gun, essentially.
Yep. Cool. So we've gone through a few things here, some sequences and that kind of thing. I'm not going to talk tons about a lot of this, so I'm just going to say that throughout some of the 1920s art passing, another person on RTBR named Collinstead, or Joseph, was actually quite helpful for consulting with a lot of things. For some reason, he knew, like, a lot about 1920s stuff and what would or wouldn't have been around. So, yeah, he was very helpful in that regard. These posters are royalty-free posters I found online. These were basically magazine covers, actually, from the 1920s. But it didn't take a lot to adapt them for use as posters on the walls. This is one of those design things, like the graffiti and so on, where it's like, in Half-Life 2, when you map for Half-Life 2, it's so easy to just, like, detail a wall, and to just kind of, like, put graffiti and posters and stains on it and stuff. But here, it was like, I have to rethink everything. I have to really try and target stuff that looks right at a glance, right? I'm sure there's still things that are, like, a little bit inconsistent. Like, I don't know, maybe this magazine covers from, like, 1931 or something, for instance. But, like, the layman who looks at it is meant to look at it and go, oh yeah, that works. And that's really what I'm looking for from out of that. Who did the animations for the weapons? It was two guys, Gatra and Fnuxray, did the animations for the weapons, and they did a really good job. Adding a lot of bounce to a lot of the weapons and feeling very nice and fast. Were there any RTVR assets used? I'm sure I did use some RTVR assets, but not these skyscrapers. If there was any RTVR assets used, it was probably very, like, specific things, I would have thought.
Chicago, what we've got for you. Today's key item, the Green Metro Gang, out of control. The Chicago PD Commissioner issued their...
So in case you couldn't already tell, this radio's me.
The Metro Gang of small time.
Let me just turn down the music for a second. I think it's slightly...
Not worth the change. Well, we've got news for you, Commissioner. This gang took 5 men to a short pier and sent them packing. We think maybe their families don't call this gang small time. A deeper look coming soon in this broadcast. Keep your radio on, folks.
Yeah, so I added those super late in development, actually, like probably in the last month or so before final testing, because some of the feedback, right, was that the main kind of draw of a project like this is like the vibes of the eras and stuff, right? Like the gameplay is not like, you know, game changing, I suppose. I don't really introduce any really crazy new mechanics, and so the vibes are what needs to be right. And so there was stuff like that with the radios, which was suggested, and I put it in testing, really received it well. And then there's also some stuff like this Half-Life 2 newspaper just being edited. This is a screenshot of the street outside, and then there's Fabrine, the main antagonist, who turns up later, and then the car on the back, instead of being the Half-Life 2 car, is a Chevy Tudor, like the 1920s cars. So there's a lot of like low impact retextures like that scattered around, but kind of, you know, you look at them and you go, oh, that's neat. And that's one of those things where it's just kind of like, it's like the burlap sacks. It's kind of, if you don't really know, then it just kind of looks a little different, and it's kind of neat, I guess. And if you do know, then maybe you appreciate that there's an extra detail on there. Because a big philosophy I've always had with like the modding and stuff is like a lot of it is basically just about making something that feels new and feels different in some way. We'll talk about this in a minute. There's a power-up thing right here. There's a few contributions to mention. But, and then this sequence here is something very similar. So that's basically the canal sequence from Half-Life 2, but then there's a projected texture over here, and the whole thing is cast in shadow, so it's just meant to be a neat little thing to find. So, let's go through. So, Abby, I know you didn't program the power-ups, but you did make tweaks through the power-ups. The original power-ups were coded by someone named Barcode Scanner, and then Abby ended up tweaking them at various points for the last year of Burton Equation development. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly what I did for the power-ups, but I know that I know for a fact that I made the power-ups have the double damage have a tick sound. So every second it plays a tick sound, sort of like the Quake 1 quad damage power-up sound. When it ends, it'll play a tick sound, but it just plays that for the entire duration. As an ending sound, as a start sound. I also did some tweaks to the health stuff, mainly just quality of life changes. I think are those the only two power-ups we have?
Yeah, that's right. So there is actually a cut third power-up that I didn't end up using. This was a haste power-up, which basically set your walking speed to sprint speed. But around that time is also when I actually made the sprint infinite anyway. And so we really didn't need that power-up in the end. I think with more time it might have been nice to have an infinite ammo power-up or something like that, but by the time that idea came to mind, we were pretty late in development. And I decided that the balance was fine enough. The health and double damage power-ups. Right, so Entity, would you like to talk about the sound design on the double damage power-up? Maybe I can reload to a place where I can pick up the power-up. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, go on. Talk about it as I'm playing.
Yeah, well, yeah, so I just remember what I did for this, so I'll go back over the Redux. So I think Kralik kind of came up with a quick little sort of placeholder, and I kind of took some aspects of that, spruced up a little bit, and then, you know, kind of put some stuff together. Like I added some sounds of a revolver with the clicks and, you know, the revolver, you know, the cylinder spinning, and added some aspects to that as as it starts ticking down. Added two sounds of that, varying sounds of that, just sort of I had one sort of normal counting down sound, and then as it sort of slows down, I think 5 seconds before it stops, kind of added a second sound of that for variety's sake. What else? What else? Gotta remember.
I mean, I think that about covers it, really. That's kind of most of it.
Yeah, well, yeah. One thing I actually do remember is at the end there's a little ding from the typewriter, a typewriter ding when it stops.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that was really satisfying for me. I was really proud of that. When it ends, you know, you have a little typewriter ding there.
Yeah, we have typewriter noises for the main menu as well. When you hover over the buttons and it goes tick tick tick. You go in the options.
Yeah, that was really satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So that kind of pretty much covers that.
Yeah. Cool. So so we're gonna have another comic sequence here. Entity, I didn't really ask you about your voice direction for Burton before. So after this comic, maybe you'd like to talk about that a bit, and what you brought there. So yeah.
I'm not sure gang were more prepared than I thought. I knew they were just waiting for me to make a move. But they have the streets locked down. Gotta take the fight to them in the warehouse district. That's the hole for Brains dug himself into. Smack dab in the middle. The gang is armed to the damn teeth. Military surplus, automatics. Yeah. I think a bit of confiscation is in order.
Alright then.
Yes, so I mean, I remember, Kralik got me to replace, or sort of, start the initial lines, 6 years ago.
Oh yeah,
And that's when he asked me to Yeah, and that was a while ago. So, yeah, I had the initial lines. I didn't really have much direction back then. It was. So yeah, sorry, I cut out there my Discord.
Sure.
But yeah, so there wasn't really. It was initially just placeholder lines. But sort of as the mods sort of kind of like kept going into development over the years, there was probably 2 more iterations of sort of lines that we did, and that kind of involved like rewrites and stuff, and sort of like of the dialogue. So I think probably maybe 2021, I think there was sort of like a second pass. And this was as the game wasn't complete yet, but there was a second iteration around that time, and then 2024, November and December last year, which was a few months ago, that was sort of the last iteration of lines that I recorded for the Burton equation, and that involved kind of like the final revision of the script for all the time periods, including terminus and stuff. So yeah, so I mean, by that point, over the course of I don't know, maybe after 6 years, I think, which is a long time. I mean, like we kind of had I kind of had a better idea of who Burton was and sort of the voice to go for the last revision. So it was a lot of it was a lot of physical time of 6 years to sort of get into the groove and sort of let Burton sort of marinate a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like after all that time, and so it was kind of like a discovery, like a 6-year discovery, you know what I mean? And like sort of working towards the last revision of the dialogue. So for the last sort of revision, the last iteration of dialogue, I sort of realized, like I took a lot of inspiration, like actually before the last iteration of lines, I actually watched The Watchmen movie.
Yeah. Very good.
From like the late 2000s, and you know, Rorschach was a big thing for me, you know, and I love Rorschach from the Watchmen movie, so I actually happened to watch that when I was away. Because I was traveling, I was actually traveling Asia, traveling China for the entirety of last year, and I came back, and I watched a lot of movies in my time doing that while I was traveling. So I watched The Watchmen, and that was really that was a big inspiration for me for sort of last iteration. But beforehand, though, it was just a lot of, you know, the main thing for me was just sort of taking inspiration from old noir films and sort of 1920s detective noir films and stuff. But I still kind of kept aspects of that, obviously, because that's what we're going for with this character, but I absolutely picked up some inspiration from some of the movies I watched over this last year, like Watchmen, the Rorschach was my big thing. I thought, you know what, we're going to go out with a bang, development's almost over.
There'll be a spare fuse around here somewhere.
I'm going to pick up some Rorschach, you know what I mean? And so that was a big thing for me, so that's sort of inspiration for the Burton is the last iteration. Obviously, you know, Chicago detective, you know, I put a little bit of, trying to make sure to put a little bit of some Chicago accent elements in there as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, basically there was a lot that, it was a long period of time where we sort of, you know, had Burton marinate a little bit, so we kind of discovered, as Kralik said before, you know, over the time periods that we'll get into, you know, there's different sort of elements of Burton in there, you know, he sort of 1920s is a little bit more gritty, a little bit more sort of seclusive, I guess, you know, 1920s, and you know, 40s is a little bit more, as the 40s and 80s and the present time, you know, he kind of time period. So, but yeah, that's kind of If that answers the question, maybe I'm missing a few things, but I'm sure we'll trust that.
No, I think, yeah, no, that's great.
Finally took his badge seriously enough to act out the law. We hear things are getting pretty heated up there, so keep your head down if you want to keep your head at all. Some eyewitnesses say Chicago's own Zachary Burton is leading the charge, who was recently promoted to detective after his solving of the Grand Hill murders. We hear he's a survivor of the Great War. The most Metro gang thugs are in for a tough time.
So I guess that's an interesting thing we can talk about. How Zachary Burton was not a World War I veteran until we really considered the rewrite. And I think, you know, like Entity says, we kind of went for a rewrite in the last year of development. It was kind of like a lot of the lines stuck around for so long. It was like, well, I'm sure we can come up with something that sounds better. I wrote a lot of those lines, you know, in 2018, right? Because I recorded the initial placeholders, right? So of course I wrote some lines myself, and then Entity brought a lot better presentation to him, of course, but even with his better presentation, it still felt like the lines were a bit simple, in places, and so, you know, the idea that I kind of ended up thinking is like, well, we need to rewrite these anyway. We can use, you know, a bit more, character kind of to it as well, and turn down the game a bit as well, a suggestion from YouTube. And, you know, we were also thinking about how to expand Fabrine's role, right? So, Flash, Boenpheus isn't here right now. He will be, I think, at some point during the stream. But he's the voice of Fabrine. And as he voiced Fabrine, I really liked what he did with it. And I thought, you know, of course, Entity's lines were great. And I thought the game would probably be much improved if these two had a bit more of a dichotomy going on. And so the thinking was, well, why don't they both be... They need to both have something in common, right? Besides that they're time travelers or whatever. So that we kind of have something to bounce off of. And it was like, well, what if they're both World War I veterans, right? And then it's a little bit easier to explain why Zachary Burton is just pretty handy with guns. You know, it's a little bit easier to explain why he's like kind of a decent kind of action hero type. And then I think Entity was able to really bring some of that kind of... That haunted experience of war during the 40s section as well.
Yeah, it was really cool how things sort of fell into place, sort of in the wider story and, you know, character development of, you know, in the last year when we sort of added the detail of him being a World War I veteran, that sort of kind of perfectly fell in place as he kind of went along in the time periods, especially in World War II. Because it kind of like got even more serious for him. Because, you know, he's in the Second World War. And that's when it just gets... The rabbit hole goes deeper for him, and it got even more personal for him, in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you played it straight, the whole... You know, there's that joke about going back to, like, the 1920s and being like, oh, you lived through the First World War. And then someone reacting like, First World War? Right? It's kind of like, what if you play that straight and you take someone who only just came back from that, right? And you say, no, it's gonna happen again and it's gonna be worse this time, right? It's kind of like, what do you get off the back of that? So, here's a cute little Easter egg. There's a DeLorean in every chapter, and if you press E on it, it time travels somewhere, and you get weapons from another time period. So, at one point I was going to tie this into achievements, but after looking at the Steam achievement system and realizing it was a bit complex, I went, oh, never mind. So, but yep, there's one of these in every period, has some secret weapons. I love secret weapons to be found. We do it in RTBR all the time. I say all the time, once per division. Actually a little bit more than once per division, I guess. There are like things that you can get a weapon that's in the same division a little bit earlier sometimes, if you're really clever, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, you know, it's something I really loved when I picked up from Serious Sam. I really like how they do it in Serious Sam. So, kind of been one of my favorite things now to do in mods as well. I just want to do something else real quick here and throw on the developer console and AI disable. I just want to say, this hold animation for the Metro Cops kind of writes itself as to why these guys should be holding Tommy guns, right? So, it's pretty perfect. That's one of those things that just kind of accidentally came together really well. Once I kind of put in the weapon and the model and everything, and it was like, oh wow, this works. So.
Well, that fits hell of a lot better than, you know, just holding an MP7 like that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, if you shot an actual MP7, you know how to actually hold
Tight,
it.
dirty fighting.
Yep, exactly.
You don't hold it
Nothing
like
I'm
that,
not
so.
used to. From now on the streets of Chicago. I've had some run-ins with these punks before, but they've really kicked it into high gear this time. I might be jumping into my grave here, but I'll be damned if I don't pull Fabrine down with me.
That's fun, isn't it, Entity? Do you remember how much of a conversation we had about whether kicking it into high gear was something a saying someone in the 1920s would actually know?
Yeah, you know, something that was so fun, like, and something that I loved was just, like, you know, being, you know, sort of talking to the Kralik about, like, and we're just, like, going through the script and, like, each line of dialogue we would assess and sort of, like,
yeah, absolutely.
Ask the question to, like, we would ask each other, like, is this something that they would say back then? Like, is this something that, you know, a 1920s person would say?
Yeah.
And that was really fun.
Like, here's something
that
interesting.
That was a fun little thing.
Yeah, like once, for example, I can't remember the exact line of dialogue right now. I'm sure it'll come to me when we hear it. But there was one where we were talking about whether or not he would have called these guys aliens, right? Because the use of an alien to refer to extraterrestrials didn't really happen until the early, like, 1900, as in before 1910, right? With stuff like War of the Worlds, right? Even though War of the Worlds doesn't actually call extraterrestrials aliens at any point, right? So it's one of those awkward things where it's like, how do we get him to say aliens, right? In a way that makes sense. And I think we did actually land on Martians or something. But I'm not sure. I think we're gonna have to see when that line comes up.
Yeah, it might have been like Martians or monsters or something.
Yeah, like we didn't say aliens because it's like that use of the word did not exist yet. So it was very interesting. It was very cool. It was like looking around the environment and being like, oh, plastic bags didn't exist, so all the trash has to be in burlap sacks, right? Like I said, it's one of those things that was very rewarding. Someone says, did the game originally end with Zachary Burton dying and Fabrine already being dead in the 1940s? Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Fabrine, who we're about to hear in a minute for the first time, the whole thing with Fabrine being the proper antagonist didn't really turn up, I think, until like 22, I think, is when I really started going ahead with that. And that was because, like, in 2018, the Burton equation was actually called Half-Life Noir, and it was just the 1920s, right? That was the idea. And I did it, and I kind of liked the idea of time-traveling detective dude. And I was like, what if it was, you know, not just the Combine who were time-traveling? What if it was, like, him, and he went through a few different periods? You know, and so he kind of time-travels, and you see him in the year 40s, 80s, and so on. But I did the time-traveling, and Fabrine still was just in the 1920s. And I felt that there was something missing, and that core thing was, like we talked about earlier, that sort of dichotomy between a protagonist and an antagonist. And this was never going to be, like, a super story-heavy game. But it seemed like we needed something there. And so Fabrine kind of came up in importance, and he no longer was dead at the end of the 1920s. He became a consistent thing. And we spitballed ideas throughout 23, and then in 24 we really executed on them. So that's why we ended up where we are now. And then, yeah, Zachary Burton died at the end originally. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with that exactly. I don't know if he definitely died, or I just hadn't figured out whether he would definitely died yet. But the earlier builds, a lot of which we made available, by the way, as part of the 1.2 patch, so you can go and try those out and see how Burton equation developed over the years. You know, I think it's basically just that we hadn't fully decided yet. And if we didn't have the post-credit scene, then it would still, I guess, be implied that he just died. Right? It's only with the addition of the post-credit scene we added but it now becomes, oh, he's still around, alive somehow.
Well,
So
if it ain't Detective Burton, someone decided to stop hiding in their office and try to be a hero, huh? Come get me on the roof, Detective, if you've got the stones, that is.
here's where I really wish Flash was here, so we could ask him about it. But when Flash hops in, we'll ask him about his Fabrine stuff. So yeah, Flash being the voice actor for Fabrine. So.
I'll report back at the office.
So that's so here's the cute thing here is him saying that's all is something he's kind of always said actually. And we'll talk about the Tesla Tommy as well in a minute. But that was, as I say, before I really considered Fabrine as being a more lengthy antagonist. And so he said that as a kind of thing of like, oh, that's it, that's all Fabrine is. And then that was all that Fabrine was. And then, you know, now it's in there as a cheeky reminder of that, I guess. And then you've got the, you've got the Tesla Tommy, which we don't have a lot of ammo for, so I'm not going to waste it because we have a boss fight coming up. But yeah, most of the weapon models in Burton Equation are royalty-free models from Sketchfab and TurboSquid and that sort of thing. The same is true of the Tesla Tommy, although I did make some pretty heavy modifications. I was very lucky to find something like this. I was browsing around for something like this, and I was like, I'm going to have to make something like this myself, probably. And then, yeah, someone had happened to make something, and I was like, oh, I actually really like this. And made some modifications and ended up using this for the Combine modified Tommy gun.
Did
Speak
you
of the
really
devil.
think it was going to be that easy, Detective?
So we're hearing Dimitron's first track at the moment. That Rattle and Boys is a maybe too obvious, but I think cute reference to the whole thing with the skeletons of the Tommy guns.
Let's switch things up a little, huh?
So I'm gonna just zip through this fight real quick so that you can see it, and then I'm gonna break it down and talk about it a bit more.
I got surprises. Try to keep
This way. Ooh.
Who's that handsome fellow voicing Fabrine?
Oh, there he is! Cool. We're gonna finish the fight, and then I'm gonna do it again in length so we can talk about it a bit more. So, and then you will have plenty of opportunity to talk about the handsome fellow voicing Fabrine.
You got lucky, Burton. But you ain't have no idea what you're in for. See you later. Much later.
Where'd he go?
Cool, there we go. So I think there's an autosave right before you...
You got lucky, Burton.
No? Oh, okay. Is that where the autosave? What about this autosave? Okay, cool, right here. Cool, so I'm just gonna AI disable real quick, and we'll talk about a few things going on in this fight. So number one, let's talk about the music, Dimitron.
So I had never really done like 20s theme music before. Not really my kind of style, but I tried to mix in elements of I tried listening to some 20s music and then using that as reference, and I tried to mix in some elements of like breakcore and Half-Life, a little bit of Half-Life 2 music, to really give it an invigorating like feel and stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Alright, number two is, I'll just quickly talk about the model. So, obviously, Fabrine needed his own model. If he was going to be a recurring boss character, he needed some unique visual personality. And the inspiration for this was the comic he appears in Again, at the time that comic was drawn, Fabrine was not the main antagonist. He was kind of only the antagonist from the 1920s, and that was that. And I saw that art, and I heard Flash's voice acting as well. And the thought occurred like, oh, this is too good to waste on like a one-off thing. And I was already thinking at this time, yeah, we need a proper antagonist for the game. So, you know, I expanded the role, and then he got a custom model for the mask, which I made as well. I sculpted and textured and stuff. And again, is based very heavily off of the concept art. The basic head is actually Breen underneath there with a reed texture. I'm not saying that he is actually related to Breen or anything like that. I just thought that'd be a cute thing to use as a baseline for the head. So yeah. Yeah, I think he came together. He does actually have a differently colored uniform as well, as you can kind of see when combined with the Metro Cop gangster that's at his feet. Also, he's still talking because the voice acting was not done with scenes and stuff like that. It's done with an ambient generic, so I can turn off the AI, but I can't turn off the talking. But you know what? It does give you plenty of opportunities to hear Flash and his voice acting. So Flash, talk to me about this whole thing.
Hello, boyo. Well, originally I was given the idea that this was a 19-something's gangster, Italian mobster sort of thing, so I tried to combine that with a lot of different accents and things from that era, and different sort of, not necessarily vocal tics, but just stereotypical things from that time, and also the main source I use for inspiration for the way he speaks and the way he enunciates things is from the iconic Brooklyn accent, actually. That was my main source for what exactly he sounds like, which is where the Burton thing came out of. I feel like that was something that definitely started existing because of that, and I just liked the way it sounded, and I just kept going with it. Originally, that's more or less what I was going for with the role, which was just a stereotypical gangster, but the more lines I was given and the more opportunities I was given with him, I think most of the lines didn't have maniacal villain laughing, but when I was doing the lines, it just sort of came out naturally because I felt like that would fit the character. And for some of the maniacal laughter, we actually managed to get it in the game, so I'm quite pleased with that on the role, because I definitely feel like he was over the top, so I wanted to have that over the topness be further enunciated with the maniacal cackling.
Yeah, there we go. So we'll hear more from both Fabrine and Burton as we go on, of course. Fabrine ended up getting a feature in every era once he was, you know, promoted to the role of main antagonist, which was very good for him. So, oh, that guy landed on me. That's pretty funny. Okay.
I got plenty. You got lucky, boy.
Oh, hang on. I wanted to talk a little bit about the actual mechanics here a little bit. So the last thing I want to talk about are both of these autosaves now to do with this. Yes, they are. Okay, that's fine.
You ain't have no idea.
I'll talk about them in a minute.
See you later.
In that case.
Much later.
So I don't really need him there anyway to talk about it. So the principal thing is he switches weapons. I wanted him to be I call these player adjacent enemies. There may actually be a terminology for this, but I'm thinking things like you know, the kind of like Clone Cop from NGP02, but also like the cultist leader, I can't remember his name, in Dusk as well. And that sort of thing, like basically an enemy who ostensibly has a similar amount of, seems to have a similar amount of tactics under his belt as the player does, right? And I really like this dynamic when you fight someone like this. If you've done it correctly, they kind of seem like a fairly more competent threat and everything. And I think Fabrine does it decently well. He swaps weapons. He also swaps tactics. This is actually pretty much the only use of V-Script in the whole mod, which 1UpD, another programmer who helped with Burton Equation, did give me some feedback on and some direction. And the V-Script basically, maybe I can scroll up through this. Here we go. So this blue text here about getting the schedule and that kind of thing. There's basically a V script that's running the whole time, and it tries to pick up on what the schedule of the NPC currently is, and then it force changes the schedule to something else, depending on what I want his tactics to be for that weapon. So, for instance, whenever he takes out the SMG, I want him to push the player aggressively and never stop pushing the player so long as he has the SMG out. So whilst he has the SMG out, every single time it detects a change in AI sequence, it changes it back to the pushing up AI sequence instead. And so that's basically how he works. And the fight, you know, I think it's neat. He has obviously quite a lot of health as well. So he ends up being a fairly challenging fight.
To slip away. I knew something was up with these gangsters. There ain't nothing in this world that explains what I saw here today. Stands to reason. Whatever's helping him must be out of this world. I never saw that woman again. Maybe she was just trying to push me in the right direction, or maybe she's even one of them. Either way, just being a detective ain't gonna cut it anymore. I gotta be something else.
Alright. So, yeah, I mean, that might be what we did for referring to aliens. So I feel like we did something else as well. So, the art at the start of the mod, where he talks about Fabrine Castrucci, and then the other art there of him being shot, those are the two things, plus Flash's amazing voice acting, that really convinced me this guy needed to be around a bit longer. We needed to do more with him, so... A mechanic which doesn't get mentioned a lot is that we actually do have grenade cooking in Burton Equation, which, if done properly and not like how I did it there, can be very effective as well. This thing a bit more now. So there's still a couple of item pickups over here, but the DeLorean is now gone. So the voice acting for some weapons was done by Sloth. Who was also a sound design. I mean, I guess it's kind of voice acting for weapons when you think about it. The sound design for some weapons was done by a guy named Sloth. He also did sound design on RTBR at one time. And then some of the other weapons were sound designed by CW, who is still on RTBR, as both a voice actor and a sound designer, and a mapper, and a scene maker, and a few other things, basically. And then I did some of the remaining sound effects using both of theirs as basically.
Heir of the Metro Gang didn't come out of the warehouse Detective Burton stormed just moments ago, but the people's hero did emerge, though worse for wear. The Metro Gang is still putting up a fight. Seems all the shooting is getting people's heads out there, as one fella reported one of the thugs shooting a ball as bright as the sun out of his gun. Folks, this is why you need us keep out of firefights and let the professionals handle things. We wish Mr. Burton good luck on getting home, and we think he ought to be getting a hero's welcome back at his office.
There we go. I think my impression gets... Whoa! Hello. Got energy balled there. That was interesting. I think my impression gets better as the radios go on, but you know, it's a little bit outside of my voice range, really, to do something like that properly. But I thought it'd be fun, so it was fun to try. Should use the energy ball on this, really. Grab this fuse because I already know where it is because I made this thing.
Power's out again. Best start looking for that fuse.
Oh, luckily we already found it, so no looking required.
Can't beat a man at his own game.
Exactly. Unless I die at some point, in which case I guess you can beat a man at his own game. But, you know.
I thought that was Burton himself saying that in the game.
I mean, there is that.
Can't beat a man at his own game.
He responds directly to the player as, you know, actual AI commentary. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a feature. Is Burton Equation actually reads your brain while you're playing.
You die in the game, you die in real
MRI
life.
scan. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Tron. Isn't it, Entity?
In order to gain access to the game, you get an MRI scan. So yeah,
I'd love unnecessary features like that into a mod, like a heart rate monitor. It listens to your microphone to hear what you're talking about.
That would be pretty funny.
like a BCI connected to your head, like a fucking like a neuro.
Yeah.
Something. Non-invasive BCI.
And don't forget the feature that every single mook you fight in this game actually has an RPG schedule that they tightly follow.
Yeah, this guy's RPG schedule that's very important is he walks into the corner and then walks back again over and over.
Been dishing out as much as I take, but it's getting out of hand.
This guy sits down, drinks
Gotta
one
make it
thing,
back to
walks
the
20
office.
steps, goes back and
I need
drinks the
backup.
same thing again.
Someone needs to hear about
It's
this.
NPC behavior.
Mm-hmm. So this may be a bit of an unpopular opinion, and I sense this may be where some criticism of the 20s comes from, but I actually quite like backtracking in games. But I only really like backtracking if they do something different with the area. I like to see how an area develops, right? And so, for instance, here we've kind of like, you know, I like moving stuff around to create new paths, but also you go in new areas, right? In these back two maps that you didn't get to go in before. You get to have a bit more context, right? And I think it helps it. I think it's a replay feature that I really like, because then it adds replay value, kind of, because when you play those chapters the first way again, you can look at a building and go, oh, I know what's in there now, right? And to me, that's really cool, and I really like that kind of thing in a lot of games, and like recontextualizing environments, right? And you know, I like how we did that in Salvation as well, right? For the same reason.
Yeah, allowed us to like explore buildings that weren't open up before.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Like, for instance, nowadays after Salvation came out, like I go back and I play through regular Quarry Town and RTBR, and I look at all these buildings. I'm like, I know what's behind there. I know what's behind there. Like, it's just cool.
Yeah, also did some similar stuff in Raising the Bar Retail, but I won't spoil anything.
Yeah. I think it's nice to be able to reinterpret a familiar environment, right? And be like, oh, nice. Like this building that we're going through, this kind of library thing, which is what I was going for, was kind of like, you know, like when you now play the 1920s and you look at this building, if you were to replay it, you go, oh, cool, you know, that's a library in there, and you get an idea and stuff, and you maybe even feel like, oh man, if I could go in there, I'd get the Tesla Tommy early, right? Kind of thing. Who's that? Oh, where'd she go? She's not there. Sometimes if you're quick enough, she is going to be there, but not this time. Yeah. So, that is the G-woman. She is the lady from the opening comic. And that's another thing, like... Interesting. That's another thing, like, for Breen, which... is another thing which kind of, like, felt like it deserved a bit more than what I had previously given it. Yeah, it deserved a bit more than I'd previously given it. And, it was something which was, like, fairly simple, and it's one of those things that, like, again, it's not a super story-heavy mod, right? But, like, it's very useful to have things which just cause people to ask questions and think about things in a mod like this, where, like, the story is not the emphasis, where you can let it be more about interpretation than purely, like, answering things, right? And so who the G-Woman is and what she's doing, and she's not officially called the G-Woman, I guess, although that's her model name and that's what I call her. I don't know what she is in full. I would say that she's some being that is adjacent to the G-Man, but I don't know if that means she is the same thing as the G-Man, or if she's something like the Vortigant, where like it's something that can interact with time and space in a way that's different from how humans do it, but doesn't necessarily mean she is part of the G species, the G people, whatever that is. Nylamps, some would have you believe, which I don't. So, you know, I think I think the idea of that is just, you know, you see her kind of do a few things throughout the mod if you keep an eye on things enough. And it just adds a little bit of, like, it just adds a little bit more thought to, like, what could be going on, right? I just think they take that, to be honest. But alright. There we go. So, those were also added relatively late. It was one of those things where I kind of had a sudden realization about 2 weeks before. About 2 weeks before the game came out, I was kind of thinking, I should maybe do a bit more with her. Just like a little bit more. And so she now has an appearance in every era. But she technically doesn't have an appearance in the Half-Life 2 chapter. Although she does appear in the post-credits, which is of that era, right? And then the idea of her not appearing throughout that whole chapter is to kind of make the player think they're sort of on their own this time. Like, if you caught her in any of the other chapters, then you could assume that, like, okay, there is someone watching me, right? I'm not completely on my own, kind of thing, right? Which is, like, another reason why I don't necessarily know if she's kind of the same thing as the G-Man, or if she has, like, different motivations, right? With the sense that, like, with the G-Man watching you, it's kind of meant to be, it's kind of meant to be creepy. Oh, hello. Okay. Yeah, go away. With the G-Man watching you, it's meant to be kind of creepy, and, you know, like, you don't really know what he's up to and why he's watching you and that kind of thing. And with her, the idea I kind of had in mind more was that, like, if you see her, you kind of feel like, you know, you're maybe, like, somewhat safe. Like, she's kind of keeping an eye almost on you. And so then when you don't see her for the whole Half-Life 2 chapter, it's a little bit like, oh, this is, you know, this is where it all ends kind of thing, right? So before I close out the 1920s, since this is the end, I just want to also say the very earliest versions of the 1920s maps are the only maps which have been properly cut from Burton Equation, because they were just awful. I made them in 2018 and they weren't very good. The person who helped me kind of get the ball rolling on a reboot of these, I guess, was a guy named Tim Copwell. He kind of came on, he helped me formulate the first draft of the comics, and he then also did a rework of the first map of the 1920s, which gave me a much more interesting basis to work off of when it came to, like, figuring out how to redo the 1920s to be more in keeping with the quality of the other chapters at the time. And he ended up having to dip for various work-related reasons, but I just want to shout him out because he did a lot of work, which I think helped the 1920s be a lot more interesting. I would have had to cut those maps anyway because they sucked, but yeah, Tim's help made this chapter a lot better. Let's head on in to the office.
Front line's cut. No backup coming. Seemed like that might be good for me. They're storming the precinct. There's no way out from here. But on my desk, there's a note. It's in a flowery handwriting. Pining tone. It's that woman, all right. Telling me this acts up. But I got this feeling. Feels like this play's just getting started. Maybe the world ain't so noir after all.
Okay. Once we get back to the main menu, I'll talk a little bit more about these ending sequences. Actually, it's quiet. I can talk about it. So, I always intended for Burton Equation to be played almost episodically with each chapter. Kind of like something like you would do in Doom or Duke Nukem, right? These kind of old school games. And, you know, to kind of harken back at that, I thought there would be a credits. I thought there could be a credits for each chapter, but originally this was actually just straight up the credits every time, and I thought, no, I need to do something else here. So I thought, hey, let's expand the story whilst we're at it and put these details here, kind of like, you know, in Doom and so on, between episodes. So yeah. I think the 1920s is relatively short, and so you may play the 1920s and kind of go like, oh, did this need an episodic break? Maybe. But as the introductory chapter, it didn't need to be super, super long. The 40s, on the other hand, is kind of a fair bit longer than the 1920s. The 80s is longer again, and the Half-Life 2 chapter is even longer than that. So once you get into that, it's like, I've seen some people take about 6 hours to play all of Burton Equation. And with that in mind, I think it makes a lot more sense when you talk about it being episodic. Though at that point, I also open up all the chapters so that you can kind of jump around a little bit if you want to. Sequentially, you can kind of, you know, play around with the whole time traveling thing as well, if that's what you wanted to do, and kind of play different chapters and try things different ways. So anyway, we're going to get into sepia now. This is the 1940s, so World War II.
When I woke up, the world was on fire. As soon as I finished reading that note, I found myself falling into darkness. Thought maybe I just passed out from all the blood and sweat, but then I heard gunshots, explosions, saw hard concrete walls. It only took me a second to recognize what this was. Another Great War. I didn't know why I was here, but I can't shake the feeling that wherever Fabrine disappeared to, this was it. This guy, I mean, his gang's here too. And we've got unfinished business.
There you go. Okay, cool. So the 40s. We have a similar sort of problem to the 1920s in that we don't actually have color yet. We have a different color, but we still don't have color. So there is that. But I think the sepia tone is a little bit easier to work with than the black and white. It was a little bit for me. And besides that, our passing the trenches felt a lot more straightforward. Because once you get into the 40s, like a lot of I was able to just grab a lot of stuff from Day of Defeat, basically. And that ended up being a really great baseline. So yeah, so we start off in these bunkers here. I think the chapter which I think right, I missed all of those shots. That was impressive. I think the chapter which ends up having the most atmosphere that comes from the maps themselves and from like little details and things happening is probably the 40s. So the 20s I think has a lot of good ambient detail, and the 80s has a lot of great detail with like the music and stuff and the vibe of the gameplay. But the 40s with like you know, the bunker that's kind of breaking down around you, explosives and the shaking and stuff. The German Metrocops, which was done by Employee 8, and he basically just took the voice acting from the German version of Half-Life 2, and took the voice acting from the German version of Half-Life 2, and made a custom sentences.txt, which could then be applied to all of these Metrocops. It's a great little detail. And then also the planes that we'll see when we go outside and that kind of thing. Like I think the atmospheric details of things happening ended up coming together a little bit better for the 40s than any other chapter. So I think the 40s feels originally the 40s was actually my least favorite chapter. It was one of those things I almost kind of did as a sort of like, because I kind of felt like I had to, sort of. Where it was like, well, I wanted to do the 20s, I wanted to do the 80s. I wasn't really sure how to do the, like, how to bridge the gap between the 20s and the 80s, right? Because 3 acts seemed, with a jump that big, seemed a little bit, like, awkward. It seemed like I needed another act in there. So it was like, okay, well, let's do 40s to make the World War II thing, right? But, like, I really learned to like fall in love with it a bit, like as all the details came together and as the atmosphere came up. And yeah, I think it's probably one of my favorites for like the vibes now, probably. they're shaking again from the artillery on top. Interesting. There's a couple of sequences like that one with that Metrocop there, which are added in the 1.1 update. That one's a sentry, for instance. So when he sees the player, he will alert a couple of other Metrocops to the player's presence. And yeah, there's just basically a bit more variety in the sequences, kind of like that, that was added in the 1.1. So I do think the original launched a little bit sparse, with the Metrocops doing more interesting things than standing around. And yeah, in the 1.1, multiple sequences were added in every map to account for that.
A gun's a gun, but these ones feel real cheap. If the bunkers and debris weren't enough, that alone tells me I was in war. No time for luxury when you've got men to kill. We cleared out the bunker, followed the route outside. I see a radio bunker in the distance there. My gut's telling me that's where I ought to be going.
Cool. So the person who helped define the initial art style for the 40s, which I then kind of used that as a baseline, was a guy named Matt, and then he has a bunch of numbers. I think it's 71490 or something. He did a really great job setting the initial kind of art path for the 40s, and then yeah, I kind of took it from there and logically expanded it. As we look up, we'll see the clouds and stuff, but also, there we go, some planes flying over. So these planes are basically prop dynamics, which spawn on a timer and keep respawning, and then they are spawned in random patterns to kind of fly over and stuff. And then there's a few squadrons which will repeat, and then there's this one, for instance, of a German bomber being chased by a pair of Spitfires, which are British planes, of course. So yeah. And oh, and I should mention the particle effect at this point. I should say that although Random Cat, which is RTVR's particle guide, did not actually do any bespoke particles for Burton Equation, I have used a lot of RTVR particles with permission from him in Burton Equation, so stuff like impact particles, for instance, which may be easier to see in a period with color, but also the muzzle flashes, the smoke. And then a few specific ones like some explosions and that kind of thing as well. This feature here of explosives having the kind of the glowing on them to kind of indicate them is a feature that I added in the very recent 1.2 patch. You see that particle effect there was done by Random Cat. This is because people felt that the like the health and the ammo pickups having it was really useful for areas like this where like it's dark and the color correction makes it a bit hard to pick out the specifics maybe. But felt that the explosives, which are added up throughout a lot of places in the 1.1 patch, probably they needed them as well to kind of help indicate to the player a bit more what's going on. So. That's one of my favorite things to do. Is kick soldiers out of the map like that. So, in order to actually achieve that, the physics force of the kick is not necessarily set to be higher, but the damage is pretty high, especially relative to, say, it's higher than HP02's, or even Salvation's, and Salvation's is a bit higher than HP02's, I think. So that's why, first of all, there's damage involved, but the other thing is I recompiled the Metrocops to deliberately have smaller mass values, and then the idea behind that was, you know, they would be kicked better.
Lay themselves. Just steer clear of them.
So these shield scanners laying mines, and they're wearing steel helmets, by the way, if you can see that. These shield scanners laying mines were also added in the 1.1, and this was basically because a common criticism was that basically it seemed that kind of Burton equation needed a bit more. Wait, you can kick these out of the air. There we go. Yeah, the thing that maybe it needed more enemy variety, because the Half-Life 2 period does pretty well, but each other chapter basically only has one other enemy that's like unique pretty much to that chapter. And so my thinking was to stagger out the enemies introduced in the Half-Life 2 chapter a bit more. And so we have mines and shield scanners here in the 40s, and then in the 80s we got manhacks, which are kind of neon manhacks. So...
I wanted to be back in these fucking trenches. I had enough. Slipping through the mud. Slipping through the dirt and the bodies. Fighting someone else's war. For no goddamn reason. Well, that's one silver lining, though, huh? This time I've got a real itch to fight these bastards. Radio tower's on the other side of this no man's land. I've got a bad feeling about wandering out to the open, but it's the only option I've got. Keep moving or to fall behind.
Okay. Let's move on. So this is the third map. So with this map I tried to open it up a bit. Once I kind of realized I wanted to do trenches a couple times, I was like, how do you make that kind of be a bit different each time? And so the first map in the trenches is a little bit more close quarters. This one has a lot more open space, and of course hunters get introduced in this map as well. And then the last trenches map is a little closer again, but has areas where it kind of opens, a sort of mix of the two maps. Has the hunters and also has a boss fight against the APC, like we're gonna see. The 40s also was probably overtuned for a while in terms of difficulty. It was one of those things that ended up getting tweaked later to make it a little bit more manageable. Like the addition of this double damage power up here, which lets you one-shot this hunter, which is pretty fun. You kind of get an opportunity to know that there are going to now be hunters. You have a fairly easy way out if you're having a bit of struggle with it. But you can't always guarantee you're going to have one. Something else I added was, as well as the extra sequences in a lot of the chapters, I added 2 places where you can actually use the environment to kill enemies. So here, for instance, if these Metrocops were still here, I could have shot this. These are kind of some fuel tanks on the back of this tank. If I shoot that, it forces the cannon to go off, which then will blow up the enemies that are here, and obviously blows up the sandbag too. So there's a handful of things added like that in the which were added in the 1.1 to kind of give the gameplay a little bit more kind of differentiation in how you kill these guys. Magnum it is. Wait! I forgot that these mines were here. Because those were also added in the 1.1, of course. In a few places, the mines are just placed, as opposed to getting placed by shield scanners. And just variety's sake, basically. Also, it's very hard to get shield scanners to behave in these trenches. That's one of those things where, like, of course, I did not design these maps to have shield scanners flying around dropping mines. And the best places to drop them are in places that are, like, you have a little bit of constraint with how you're supposed to move, so you have to be careful. So the trenches made sense to drop them. So, if these trenches are too small, the AI just used to get stuck. So, drop it in a slightly open areas, more open areas, like the first one we saw before. Just open the YouTube and check the chat real quick. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. So, we are now moving on to the last outdoor map of the 40s. In this map, we'll be fighting the boss of the 40s, I guess. The mini-boss, I suppose, besides the hunters.
That Tommy gun, this time travel, these monsters, whatever the hell's going on here.
So it looks like
monsters.
Yeah, there we go. I was about to say, yeah, it looked like we settled on monsters.
I don't have a full
Oh.
picture.
At least somewhere.
I'm not sure if I even can, but this is just the start of what these guys have planned. All I know is I gotta shut it down. The last set of trenches between me and that radio tower. Then I blow it to high hell.
By the way, I just have to say this.
Maybe I'll be out of these trenches and back in my office just like I left it.
I remember you. I vividly remember you posing the Gmod, like posing ragdolls and Gmod for the like for the comic slides, like in the art, and then you would give that to the artist to like draw over, like give like a proof of concept.
So before I had the comics artist, first of all, the plan was maybe I have to do these. Maybe I could do. I had the idea of the comics, but I didn't have an artist yet. I wasn't sure if I was going to get one, because it's one of those things that like had no precedent in Half-Life 2 modding, right? Like people haven't really done that before, and so it was very like uncertain if it was even going to be something I could actually do. And because of that uncertainty, I had a plan at first to basically make all the comics in SFM and edit them down a bit. And then I realized we didn't really know SFM, so I figured, okay, Gary's mod's gonna have to do. So Gary's mod is what I was gonna do. I'm gonna kill these guys with the but then in the end, I just ended up making them all as reference material for the comics artist anyway, so that panned out. So this is the Combine Panzer Shrek. So this gun went through a lot of iteration, because I decided pretty early what I wanted the Combine effect to be, but it was very difficult to make work, and I think the iteration we've got here is about the best. Is the best that we could have done. So I knew I wanted the actual shield on the Panzer Shrek, the very famous Panzer shield, to be like Combine energy, right? But when it was directly in front of the player, it was too distracting. Like, it made it very hard to actually see how you're supposed to kill things. And so I had to fiddle with it a lot. I thought maybe if I make the pattern less distorted and I make it move so there's patches where like you can see. Messed around with the proportions a bit. But yeah, in the end, the most sensible thing was to basically move it down to the bottom right a bit more from its original resting position. And also relative to the other rocket launchers, for instance. So that's kind of what I ended up going with. There we go, that's pretty fun. That's a pretty fun thing you can do with the hopper mines as well, is kick them back into Metro Cops and blow them up.
Just like Mom used to make.
Yeah. A big thing I've always fought with like the sandbox I've tried to do here is a little bit of like, obviously you can just shoot everyone, but I think I give you enough health, and I think there's enough leeway that you don't have to play 100% optimally, which is just going to be shooting guys, right? You can do fun things, like occasionally you can kick a guy into the stratosphere, you can kick a hopper mine back at someone, and that kind of thing. That's kind of what I wanted to permit. I wanted to permit you to kind of approach fights in your own way to make make them kind of more varied and fun in other ways. Obviously, like, I added the sequences and stuff as well to try and kind of make it easier. That's interesting. I guess some of these didn't have the glows, whatever. Obviously, you want to make sure that the combat encounter baseline is pretty fun, but you feel encouraged to try new things. You've got a ton of tools and stuff like the charge punch and the kick and so on. And yeah, really the idea is you can kind of experiment and try a variety of different ways to kill these guys. And yeah. Oh. Okay, I guess we just had a little lag spike, but that's fine. Came back. Alright, so right here is probably the most diabolical sequence I added in the 1.1, where you run into this trench and all these explosives get punted down at you. That was a fun one. That came from an earlier idea I had already had at one point, which was to have some steel hand grenades get thrown at the player. I ended up settling for explosive canisters. I think that works too. So I'll take a minute to look at the radio tower here. I really like smothering things in Combine Tech to create like a big shape. And so here, of course, when we had the radio tower, we used to have a much smaller one that was not really that impressive. So first things first, looked up what did radio towers in the 40s kind of look like, and we ended up at a rough shape like this. And then I needed to make it combine-ified, so that the whole thing of it opening up a time travel portal and so on would make sense. And so then, yeah, spent a good amount of time smothering it to kind of create this kind of combine Eiffel Tower almost. I think it becomes very nice and compelling. I think this and the time travel nexus are two really nice, compelling visuals in this mod of like the combine stuff. Let's take some cover. So here we now have the 40s Combine APC. Let's fly AI disable real quick and fly up to this thing. My maneuver speed might be a little low. I don't have cheats on. It's interesting. So, besides the German camouflage, which is one thing, I also added these German kind of headlamps, and then some really nice spotlights which shine out, provide some cool vibes. You've got these toes on the front as well attached, and then the actual APC gun is modified with like a German pintle-mounted gun, and then there's other details around it as well, like these ropes. There's a shovel on here somewhere. I think. Where did I add the shovel on this? Yeah, there it is. There's a shovel as well. So it was really nice to mess around with things like this, and the Panzerschreck can kind of make something different. That kind of kit bashing is definitely my favorite way to make like models in Source. I don't mind modeling stuff from scratch, of course, but kit bashing is really my favorite way to do it. Okay. No rockets needed. Okay, and entering the final map of the 40s now. So this final map, I'll talk about in a minute.
Well, this mortar on the way in. Ones I'm used to are too big to carry. This one almost is. I got the gist of it. Looks like it's been modified, same as that Tommy gun was. Now I've got to set up the fireworks and hold my ground. I'll wait for them to go off.
Cool. So this map had a very storied history developmentally, because the original holdout sequence here was, to be honest, kind of just a lot worse. And it needed to be scrapped and redone again, pretty much. And I ended up on the current iteration, which was a much bigger room with multiple layers of attack and that sort of thing. I think that worked quite nicely. Before I forget, there she goes again. The G-woman dress is actually derived from the there's the bridesmaid variant of the witch from Left 4 Dead 2. So I actually took that dress because I couldn't think of anywhere else. So it was like a Valve-made game where like there would be a lady with a dress. I'll stop talking for a minute.
I warned you about having the stones to see this through, Burton. It's bigger than you'll ever realize. Time to die.
Oh, I knew it. The bastard's thrown in with its outer space. The pillar's gotta go. Some dynamite ought to do the trick.
There we go. Very helpful tutorialization from Zachary Burton there. There's one other dude. There he is. Is he hopping on? I don't know where he's hopping. Yeah. Well, there you go. This is the visual from standing underneath it, which I think comes together really nicely. And this was, once I decided that Fabrine needed to be in more places, this was, there's a lot going on here to talk about. Just go from thing to thing, I guess. This was the first place where Fabrine was re-added, in this time. Giving, like, some kind of illusions of that. And I think, Flash, for that, you kind of bring a little bit of cheek to this line, like,
Need to shut this place down. Maybe I can take down the center pillar.
There's just a line here. I think you bring some kind of cheekiness to this line where it's sort of like Fabrine taunting Zachary, almost like, I've figured this out and you haven't yet. You know, I'm still here, kind of thing. When he says, "Fancy seeing you here, detective." I think you bring some great energy in that one.
Thank you. Every single, most of the lines, whenever I read them, I immediately think the man is so smarmy, and every single thing he says is a barb and a jab and a taunt directed at Burton, so I wanted to have that energy, and it just feels like he didn't expect them to be here, but at the same time, he's not gonna miss an opportunity to clown on the man. So it's just dripping with the desire to shit talk the man at every opportunity, so I tried to bring that energy as much as I could.
Yeah, excellent. And then this Spitfire here, but flies over and provides supplies. Pretty much does as you'd expect on the tin. It just flies over and drops crates containing items that you might find helpful. It was basically just because as this fight goes on, it became pretty clear in testing that it was actually quite easy to exhaust all of the supplies that were in the map by default.
These guys have a shot cleaning crew.
And so putting the supplies around made it a lot easier to motivate people to kind of get going around the arena rather than find one corner and stick to it. But having the crates kind of is an additional kind of there you go. It's an additional protection in case you, like, you know, kind of get a little stuck with not having as many things as you might like. Whoop. Slow down there. That's fine.
But I've got all the time in the world. I'll see you in the future. If you can make it there.
There's Fabrine getting one last parting shot before everything goes interesting.
Sure enough, as soon as the fire started raging, everything went white again. There's somebody watching me. Maybe it's that woman from the letter. In any case, it's something I don't understand. Either way, wherever I'm headed to next, I won't have sepia-tinted glasses when I get there. I actually had to refresh myself on how to pronounce that.
Sepia, yeah.
Like for years, I thought it was sepia.
Yeah.
And then I sort of woke up from my stasis, my pronunciation stasis, and I sort of had to touch up on that.
Yeah.
So sepia. Remember that.
Sepia.
Sepia.
And there you go, it's the same general idea again.
I came back right in time, honestly.
Yeah, just in time to talk about your posters. And of course, our first, the first music done by Slimek as well. So from here on out, all the music is original to the mod, which is really nice. So yeah. So, no points for guessing which was my favorite chapter stylistically to work with, which was this one, the 80s. This was my favorite one to work with. I really liked the neon. I really liked the music. I think the gameplay flow is really good with just running through and gunning everything down. Yeah, I think the whole thing of being set in a skyscraper is you know, it's meant to be kind of like a bit like Die Hard in that way, right? Where it's kind of like you're battling your way up a skyscraper, sort of. Let's turn up the music a little bit for this chapter, I think. Is this using the music volume? No, it's not. Okay, on the main menu, I guess it uses the sound volume. Whatever. Let's boot up the 80s here.
From the muddy trenches of another great war, I was propelled decades ahead into a bright neon glow. A new kind of America, one drenched in booze and color. As the criminal underground once again reared its head like it did in my time, I fell into old habits and spun up my magnum. I had a syndicate to topple and a skyscraper to scale, just like old times.
Okay. Oh, bit of friendly fire going on there. So we actually have our first alternate fire mode here in the weapons. So something that was added also relatively late, but in 2024, was the alternate fires for a fair amount of guns, right? And the idea was just to help each arsenal stand out a little bit more from each other. I felt that the Glock and the USP ended up kind of feeling like they didn't have as much interesting stuff going on as the M1911, which does a ton of damage, or the Luger, which is also does a lot of damage. They both felt like more interesting pistols. I obviously couldn't have a pistol that had twice the ammo capacity deal the same amount of damage, and so the solution was alternate fires. So. Abby. Is Abby still with us? It's getting a bit late for her now, I think. But I don't
I just saw one of my posters, by the way, as well.
Yeah, so Abby, let's talk about the Glock first, and then Game Boy, let's talk about your posters.
Yeah, so the Glock is, well, like the burst fire is pretty much just like from last year, except instead of 2 bullets, it's now 3. The USB is a 2-bullet burst fire. I don't think I changed much, implementation wise. I think it's like pretty much the same thing. The burst fire does have like maybe it's my internet. Anyway, the burst fire does have different accuracy to the primary fire. Yeah, and we can look at the Game Boy posters now. I want to see them.
Yeah, sure. After I kill this guy who's up here. He's gone on his somewhere. Right.
I think you passed by like 3 of them already. How about we start from the beginning? Because there's at least 5 of them. Way back there. Way back there.
Did we... Oh, did I pass one over here? Oh, so we did?
Yeah, it was right there. Wait, am I still here?
Yep, you're still here.
Everything's frozen. Okay. Your stream is frozen, but that's fine. I can see it on the other stream. your stream on Discord, not your stream on YouTube. So yeah, I have more of a contributor role to this project. I just saw like, you know, Kralik working on this when I first joined RTBR like 5-6 years ago, and I was like, oh shit, I wanna make some artwork. I was planning on doing more than just these posters, but I got busy with work, so I made 5 posters for this mod, and I really kind of wanted to practice kind of my illustration skills with kind of car stuff. So I want to make some car posters. The cars I was given, they were branded legally distinct. I'm not really a car nut, so I don't know what this was named after, but you came up with the name.
Yeah, this was well, should I say? Well, you might be able to tell looking at the cars. I think that's fine to say.
Yeah. So I just played around with like the names he gave me. He didn't really give me a prompt. I just kind of did my own thing. So I saw Not Star Ratza. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, like that. Not Star Ratza. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, Ride the Stars, and the artwork was kind of like inspired by an album by Smash Mouth that had All Star on it called Astro Lounge. So I just took the colors of that and kind of did my own thing. How I made these is I found some reference images. I threw it in Illustrator, kind of did my own like vectorized paint over. I really wanted to focus on gradients and highlights, and I gave like every single car kind of its own special license plate as well. So there's one of them, and we move on forward. Yeah, stars. I made these like a long time ago, so I'm trying to like remember what I was thinking. So this was actually the first one I ever made, which Lamborghini, you can assume what that's based off of. And I just put a little diner right there. So a lot of these posters are just very minimalistic. There's another one, I'm pretty sure, somewhere around here. Oh, this was Bamlero. I don't know what I was really going for, but I was like, I don't have like one that's like on the beach, so I'm gonna just make one on the beach. And a lot of these kind of like posters are just a little study with typography as well, so I played with whatever I kind of legally owned. I own all my fonts, even though this is a free project. I think there's 2 more.
Yeah, there are a couple.
But we
more
have. Yeah. Oh, there's one. This one was my favorite, the DeLorean. Oh, you gotta
give me just a sec. Oh, now they're all coming out. Look at that. I need my HUD as well.
Bro.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Where are you going? None of that. Go away. Right.
This one was my favorite one. It's just obviously like synthwave inspired DeLorean. I guess at the time, this may or may have not have been slightly inspired by the atrocious looking Cybertruck truck design when it was first announced. So I guess that was what I was maybe thinking.
Yeah.
But we don't have to talk about that. But yeah, one thing that I really emphasis was just like typography design here. Like I like, you know, custom filled that DeLorean text right there, or BeLorean, I guess it is. Yeah, BeLorean, and yeah, the nice synthwave sunset in the background. I saw another one.
Yeah. There's another one right here.
Oh yeah, so this one was like inspired just by like Art Deco design. The very minimalistic like cityscape like in the background that's just like a solid shape. And there is one more.
There
it's
is,
the
yes.
bridge one.
Yeah,
but I
that's
don't
right.
know where that is.
We'll see it before we go in the skyscraper, I think. I'll leave the
that's
HUD
alright.
off for a minute. Here's a DeLorean
More
Easter egg.
cinematic that way.
It occurs to me I forgot to do the DeLorean Easter egg in the 40s. It's in the final map and it's hidden really well, and that's why I forget to do it every time, because I hit it really, really well. Probably the most hidden of all of them, actually, is that one in the 40s. Yeah, that one's like super, super hidden, and you get a crossbow for that one.
Oh, look at this.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep, yeah, I saw it too. Killing
Once
these
we,
dudes.
yeah, annihilate those guys.
Where did you see it?
It was right there. No. Right that way, yeah. To your right.
Oh, there
It's
it
right
is.
there.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's the final one. Bridge got. I just like made a bridge in the background. I think that's inspired, which is actually funny enough because I went to it last year. I think I always mix up the name, the Great Gorge. It's in, or the Great National Gorge. It's in West Virginia. It's a national park, a giant bridge and a mountainscape.
Yeah. Yeah. So these posters were picked because of the cars that we had modeled. So these cars were modeled new for the Burton equation. These were done by a pair of modelers on Burton equation named Rhino and Irisetto. Rhino modeled them and then Irisetto textured them. And then Clatronics, who was a tester on RTBR also at one point, did some of the color variants. So each car originally had 2 color variants that was done by Irisetto, but I felt like I probably needed a couple more. So that's how we got the other variants you see here. And then these, of course, are sprinkled around to add some great vibes to it. It's one of those things that's a little interesting of, like, why is every car like a super fancy car? But I think it adds some fun pizzazz if all the gangsters, like the Combine, has set them all up with really lovely cars. I think that's kind of
It's
funny.
also Miami.
Yeah.
Miami's a pretty rich town.
Yeah, that
city.
too. Yeah, so it's a little bit explainable that way, but it adds a little bit of like fun if it's like, oh, the Combine really has a good budget for cars then to give all their Metrocorps Lamborghinis.
Welcome to Fabrico, Detective Burton. Make yourself at home. My boys are already laying out the welcome mat.
Oh, I know why his name's plastered all over the place.
So this is probably the first big win for Fabrine, really. Is getting a whole skyscraper to himself. This is another line that came in fairly late. The chopper boss fight at the top of this skyscraper, which we'll get to in not too long, existed before I expanded Fabrine to be the main antagonist, and it was just a combined skyscraper. But once Fabrine was the main antagonist, it now made pretty obvious sense to make it his chopper, right? So, yeah, and I'd already, but I hadn't yet began art passing, so this wasn't Fabrine skyscraper. This was just a skyscraper. But then yes, once I started art passing as well, it was like cool. It becomes Fabrine, cool.
I gotta ask. I don't know if you already went over it. I was doing something while you're just entering. The person who made the music, was their inspiration Carpenter Brut or Carpenter Brood?
So actually, for the for them in the early builds of Burton equation, I used placeholder music from Hotline Miami, and there was also one track which is not from Hotline Miami, which I really liked. When I got the composer Slimek on board, I gave him these tracks, and I kind of said this is kind of what I'm going for in each of these levels, and he channeled something very similar. And yes, the track in the final level was using I think that's
Turbo Killer.
No, not Turbo. Turbo Killer is the one that he ended up using as his reference, I guess. But the track I actually gave him was... Didn't mean to do that. Was actually the one that was from Hotline Miami. I'm trying to remember what it is. I think it's... Is it? No. I'm not sure if it's...
It might have been, like, from Das Mortis, or I think the name of the artist was.
No, it was definitely Carpenter Brute. Definitely Carpenter Brute. Is Perturbator Carpenter Brute, or is that another artist?
No,
That's another artist.
Perturbator is another artist.
Alright, what
He
am
does
I-
similar music, but a bit more harder.
What am I thinking of then? Sorry, what am I? I thought so. Roller Mobster. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh
sorry.
yeah.
Yes,
that is
Roller Mobster was the inspiration for the final track, right? And then it ended up being kind of it ended up kind of evolving from there, I guess. Okay, let's move up.
Yeah.
You have the Uzi, right?
Oh yeah, I do. I don't really have a lot of ammo for it yet, though, so I figured we'll talk about that once I actually get some ammo for it.
Yeah, all good.
Should be once we kill some other Metrocops coming up. With the art passing for the 80s, I initially did a pass of the whole skyscraper myself, but I felt it needed uplifting. So I asked Cora Lilac, who was on the Burton equation, and has also been on R2R before as a mapper, and she was doing the Half-Life 2 period at the time, but she really fancied taking a crack at some 80s related stuff anyway. So I asked her if she'd be interested in trying to uplift the 80s a bit to look a bit more varied, and she did a really good job. And we basically ended up splitting the maps a bit. We targeted some of the rooms that we felt were most in need of uplifting, and I used her style to kind of extrapolate out. So yeah. There you go, we should have plenty of ammo now. So, the Uzi also has an alt fire.
Yeah, so the old fire is like pretty much the same as EZ2. Like, for some reason, I can't remember exactly why, the traditional RTBR way of doing burst fires just doesn't work for the it's the Mac 11, right? Not the Uzi. Yeah, so that it doesn't work for the Mac 11. So I had to like use EZ2's open source code and yeah, take the burst fire from that. It also has different accuracy values, which I think all the weapons in this game have controllable accuracy values by weapon script, which is something I added, and I think it's super cool.
Oh yeah, you also added fire rate, that's right. This is another way that we kind of split it out. So Abby had done something with a system on RTBR, which allowed for really rapid iteration for weapons having some values that could be modified via the weapon script instead of only via the code. And then I also a very similar thing here.
No, I think the fire rate thing was done by Iridium.
Oh yeah.
But I extended accuracy to it. There was a really funny bug, or not funny, but really painful bug, where during testing, all the Metro Cops and all the people wearing wielding like shotguns and automatic weapons, they would just hit you with perfect accuracy and you'd die. And I found out that it was just because the accuracy wasn't being saved properly, and like a lot of people's opinions on difficulty, including mine, because I didn't realize that was a bug until then, were completely soured because we were just getting mowed down by people who just hit us every single time. It made the shotgun overpowered, way more powerful than the Magnum for a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of made it more like it was firing slugs or something, because it was just like a perfectly accurate set of bullets
Times
going
might
one
have changed,
place.
but for Brain
or
sure
shells,
hasn't.
You know,
All those
buckshot.
plans
Bring
still
it
hinge
back.
on humanity doing their dirty work. I've got to stick this out. There's something at the top of the skyscraper I've got to find. Answers for Brain. Here's hoping it's both.
I just want to clarify something as well. The art styles being different is intentional by the artist, but I've seen some people saying it's an AI thing. No AI was used in the creation of this mod whatsoever. The comics artist Adam Rogers did it all by hand, either through some photoshopping and a lot of hand drawing and stuff as well. And there is a disclaimer on the Steam page as well, but people seem to be ignoring that, and I feel like it deserves being brought up. So, just want to point that out as well.
Yeah, I mean, this was that was made before AI was even a thing.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like
stable diffusion.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like a lot of these comic panels were drawn in like 2020 and 2021, right? And AI did not image generation did not really exist back then. So, but you know, never mind. So the yeah. So we're into this map now. So as we came to the skyscrapers, I kind of got to thinking, you know, in a similar way as I did on the 80s man hacks. You can see they kind of got the neon on them. So these are actually based, by the way, off of I should just leave it there, really. These are based, but off of a beta manhack retexture that I did a long while back, and then I kind of thought, why not repurpose it? So some of these things here are like lines and details taken from the beta manhack, and then I've given it like the blue and the purple sheen, and I think it looks pretty nice in motion. That was another thing done with patch 1.1 to add enemy variety. Anyway, as I was kind of designing these maps, like I say, it kind of became clear that like each map was going to need like a thesis, basically, to say like something that map is about, in order for like them all to kind of feel like they have some variety in context. And so if the first map was kind of the introduction and you're on the ground, for this map I wanted there to be a lot. It was the inside skyscraper map. But there's also the maintenance floor in the middle of this map. And the maintenance floor kind of has a couple more actual navigational puzzles and navigational differences to solve. So the kind of thing that I probably could have pushed a bit further, I think, but kind of achieved what I was looking for anyway. Yeah. The ability to control fire rate is really great for this specific chapter, because the Uzi, the Mach 11. I'll explain in a minute why we keep calling it the Uzi. The Mach 11 having a blistering firing rate really gives it like a standout compared to say the Tommy gun and the MP7 and the MP40. Then of course the MP40 is really accurate, does high damage, there's a slow fire rate. The Tommy gun and the MP7 are pretty much on par with each other, really. I think the MP7's fires a tiny bit faster than the Tommy gun does. The reason why we keep calling this a Uzi is because in the code and the scripts and everything, and the model even, this is called an Uzi, because it was going to be an Uzi. Originally I was going to use the Left 4 Dead Uzi as a basis, but I ended up not really liking it, even after reconstructing the view model. And then when I looked online, there weren't really any royalty-free, weren't really any decent royalty-free Uzi models anyway. So I ended up kind of being like, okay, what's another SMG that would work for the period? The Mach 11, and yeah, I ended up finding a pretty decent model for this, so. So there's a lot of CS Office props being used, of course. That was another thing like the Day of Defeat props. It was just really handy to have. And obviously these props have a lot of great physicality. I think this one's already broken. Like loads of breakable mugs and breakable bins and paper stacks and everything. Oh yeah, I almost got moved. This key card used to be in a much more obvious spot, but it got suggested to move it, so there you go. Oh, and the other thing that's cute about this key card is, besides the fact that it says Fabrine Core on it or whatever, and it has like the key card thing in it, this was actually, the model of that is actually a cleaned up and slightly higher poly version of the cut key card model from Half-Life 1. And I just took that and cleaned up the model and retextured it basically. So this is probably the first time you hear Fabrine be anything other than like completely cocky towards Burton. It's like, oh wow, he's actually getting up here. We have to be careful with this, right? So, oh, it's a lot of dudes. Let me just let that do the trick for a minute. I think that did it. Nice. Oh, this guy opened the secret for me. There's a secret shotgun hidden in here. Which I reference with this in case of emergency break glass thing. I think is cute. You don't end up getting all of the shotgun ammo fully until, you know, the next map along. But if you want to really ruin 8 particular Metrocops days, then you absolutely can with this. And of course, the SPAS 12 in this is semi-automatic. This is actually a little bit of programming I did, because I worked out if you just basically remove the pump sequence from the code, then it becomes semi-automatic, and so that's what I did. There we go. And so we're now headed into the 3rd map of Miami.
These guys are putting up a hell of a fight. Trying to stop me from getting up here. I've gotten so far. Punks like these did enough damage in my time to my friends, my family, and my country. Not gonna let them do it again.
So, if the goal of the first map is introduce the ATs, the second introduce the skyscraper, the goal of this map is to break out of the skyscraper for a while and head out into the outside. And this required me to make an entire city townscape outside of the skyscraper for the player to look at on their way out. And just this is probably the longest thing that I had to do for this entire mod that was like one thing, right? Besides the fact that, like, art passing a map does take a while anyway. Making this cityscape and also making it performant and relatively optimized probably took about 6 months. And I was working on it fairly consistently for those 6 months, like a bit every day pretty much. And then I ended up expanding it even further during final testing to kind of make it even more kind of detailed and imply even more depth in the cityscape and that kind of thing. It's interesting because I've now actually been to San Francisco, and I know that Miami and San Francisco are 2 very different places, but like that kind of American city thing is something that like I realize I probably would have done differently now. I did look up reference to images and pictures and that kind of thing, but it's kind of hard to get a real feel for what a place looks like until you've been there. And yeah, a lot of things with San Francisco, like these streets probably needed to be about twice as wide as they are, because that's pretty much how it was in San Francisco, and I imagine it's not that different in Miami. So yeah, but yeah, overall, I'm really happy how this cityscape came out. We're gonna see more of it as we go around. The neon on these skyscrapers was insisted to be added by RZDat and RTBR, who is a bit of an 80s buff himself, like GTA Vice City, Miami Vice, you know. So there's a fun little thing I did here as well, where there's this guy acted a little funny because there's actually a ragdoll magnet right here. Because I found it was really fun to shoot these guys or kick them off of this ledge and down onto the ground below. But it was a little challenging to do consistently. And so I found it works out pretty well if you put a ragdoll magnet here and then they kind of magnetize to it and go flying off the edge. It's something that Valve did to get that kind of thing across in the canal levels as well, actually. I don't think I've already gone past it. I haven't really talked about it, but there's also a clipboard in some maps that kind of gives a little bit of... There we go. It gives a little bit of detail regarding like the skyscraper, and it's another one of those things you can just find and read if you want. Written from the usually from the perspective of one of Sabrine's goons, or sometimes some random workers who were here working on the skyscraper actually. And they fit in a few details, and one of them was that there's one of them here, of course, is that there's no windows on the inside, even though there's windows on the outside. And part of this is because the scale that I wanted for the rooms in the skyscraper doesn't actually work with the Source Engine's default texture scale. And so that kind of made possibly doing proper fitting buildings a little challenging. And then the other thing is I realized near the end that I didn't have windows on the inside, and it was like, how do I get around this problem? So I got around this problem by having a clipboard that has a worker explaining that for some reason Sabrine wanted him to build fake windows on the outside to fool people. So that was a cheeky little way to do it, I guess. It's definitely an oversight, but sometimes a cheeky fun little explanation is kind of all you need to get away with that sort of thing. So yeah. Some of these Metrocop encounters were moved to the outside of the skyscraper where they originally inside to, again, give you more opportunities to do fun things with the kicking them off the side and that sort of thing. Now this sequence is a very deliberate callback to the Half-Life 1 sequence of the vent. It was a bit challenging to think of how to do volumetrics without bespoke models, but there's a texture in Half-Life 2 which works pretty well for this purpose, so that ended up doing the job nicely. I did have to move this light positioning in order to make make more sense why the light shafts are so strong. But I think it has a really nice effect in the end of when you're being shot in there. A lot of these restroom designs were some of the things that were most inspired by what Coral Lilac did. So she did a really great job with art passing loads of other rooms like this one as well. But the restrooms were pretty basic originally because I didn't really know how to detail them, and she gave some really great pointers on how to make them look cool. So, first of these guys. So these are the shotgunners. These are basically the unique enemy for this chapter, besides the chopper and the manhacks, I guess. There's another view of the cityscape here. Yeah, originally the cityscape only went up to roughly where the big skyscrapers are. It didn't go much further than that. But when you come to the rooftop level in the next map here, you end up being able to see fairly easily where the sky ended. So I definitely needed to expand it. And then I debated whether or not to actually put it in this map because it did cause technical issues to make this map even more complex. But I think it ended up being worth it because it gives even more depth to the sky, even if I don't think it would have been as noticeable. It ended up being doable, so why not, right? Yeah, and once you get the shotgun and a decent amount of ammo for it, yeah, the rest of the ADs you're pretty much rolling, to be honest. Just gunning everything down. Here's the clipboard, by the way, that explains the windows. It may not come through at all on the stream because of compression, though. So, yeah, I don't think that's gonna. It's a little bit difficult for me to read because of the resolution, so I doubt anyone else is gonna be able to.
The Mark V hazard suit is designed for comfort and utility.
That's exactly what it says. Yes. Anyway, there's reference. Basically, the worker. You could look at it yourself in game to read it properly, or even look at the texture if you really wanted to. There's a couple of these clipboards which have some neat details on them, and yeah, that one is basically just saying some. I don't know why. I don't think we should trust this guy. He seems weird. He had us build fake windows on the outside of the building for some reason, which means he's clearly got something to hide. And then there's blood on the clipboard from where the dude's been shot for asking questions, perhaps. Here's a cute one. Toilet flushing. Then a Metro Cop walks out. So, there are a couple of those sequences I added in the 80s, which give it a little bit of fun. So, I thought about fun sequences a lot for the 80s, because I kind of want... It's kind of probably the most combat-focused chapter. And so I wanted you to have the most, like, ways of, like, killing things, basically. Whether explosives, and, you know, the way of kicking them off the building. And then also, like, fun little moments like that with the toilet flushing and so on. Alright, we're now headed to the rooftop fight, which is the penultimate map of the 80s.
Luckily for me, this elevator didn't stop till I reached the top, what I know can only be an ambush. Someone left another one of these mortars just lying around. Dumb luck, or a plant? My money's on the latter. Someone else want Fabrine dead? I'm happy to oblige.
Okay.
Here we are again, Burton.
Get another rocket launcher here.
High, the other crawling down low. It ain't gonna be like last time, detective. I can promise you that.
So originally this was using the beta Stinger model. Which is based off of a FIM 92 Stinger. But I then, you know, made a new one, or rather a spruced up one, I guess, and gave it a new texture. Which is also kind of what I ended up doing for the rocket launcher in the Half-Life 2 period as well. The Half-Life 2 rocket launcher being based off of an AT4. So I cleaned up the Half-Life 2 model and again textured that one from scratch. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really can once you get the shotgun. Like, it's just blood everywhere. You can see all the blood all over the place. Yeah, something else which comes to mind now, and this is just one of those things, right? That's like, it's hard to think of this when like you haven't been, right? But for instance, I hadn't really been to America properly until I very recently went to San Francisco, and I was thinking about the scale of like British hotels, right? And British skyscrapers, sort of, when I made this skyscraper, right? Which is like meant to kind of be an office building, and I guess it could be like hotel accompaniments, perhaps. But yeah, I was thinking about British scale, right? And so I think this skyscraper probably needed to be about double the size Or maybe like an extra half the size, maybe, right? Like 50% bigger. After actually being again in San Francisco, seeing how big all the buildings are in America, in a city like this, right? But like I say, I think it. But I guess the thing is like, maybe if you are an American and you've been to something like this, it would kind of be like, this needs to be a bit bigger. But as a European, and it seems most of the Europeans seem to think that it looks close enough like an American thing. I think that, yeah, one of the things you learn from, but you know, I wasn't about to fly to America just for that, right? So I just so happened to fly there. Yeah. I just so happened to fly there fairly recently and get a look at it. So
either way, it's a cool tank. I mean, it's unique in its own right.
Yeah. It's one of those things like the 20s and the 40s were like.
Get 'em, fellas.
There you go. Oh, and of course, Fabrine here is actually another boss fight at last in the chopper this time. There's a nice little bit of back and forth between Zachary and him.
Why don't I send you back there?
Yeah. Wait. That was a pretty early.
Exit downstairs. This place is coming apart.
That's probably the earliest cutoff I've ever had for that line. But yeah, the line cuts off. It's when he hits here, and it uses a special entity in Half-Life 2, which lets you set like a crash location basically for a helicopter or a gunship. You can do it with gunships as well, I think. And yeah, it just cuts off when you get there. Usually it cuts off for me around over, but I guess it cut off a bit earlier that time. The important thing is he blows up, and now you think Fabrine might be actually dead, I guess. So
it's never over.
Finally, Fabrine's toast.
Not quite.
Those are my chances at getting the easy way down because these screwheads stuck my elevator. This buckshot beast of a shotgun. It's no Browning, but these guys are in for a world of hurt. The smoke's choking me.
Okay. There's going to be a lot going on in this level, and I don't want to hurt the pacing, so let's just go. So the music, inspired, as I said earlier, by Roller Mobster, and also Turbo Killer by Carpenter Brute. The smoke here, also taken from Salvation. The idea was to basically add a little bit of intensity and, like, the need to be very quick, basically. A little bit of pressure for the player to kind of get moving. Was putting the whole thing on fire and making you choke as you stay in the skyscraper. It's only actually 1 damage every few seconds, so you're very unlikely to die from it, or it's not actually impossible to die from it. Amy was the one who made this smoke setup for Salvation for a kind of similar area where we wanted the player to feel pressure. And she also made the setup with the fog and everything, which we didn't design for the skybox, so that does come out looking a little different in Burton Equation, but looking at the fog. So this is that thing again where I say I really like backtracking, right? This is new. This sequence here that I added, which again uses a particle effect that Random Cat made for RWR. Yeah, I like backtracking when done right, and I feel like I really did some interesting stuff with the backtracking here, with seeing how destroyed the skyscraper's looking, You can get a view out of the cityscape through a hole in the wall here as well, for instance.
This is a little random, but I would just like to say that the music and the aesthetics of Miami is my favorite throughout the whole mod.
Yeah, I think that's true for me as well. Like I think in the end the aesthetic of every chapter did come together very nicely, but I still think the 80s is where it came together the best. Like the music and the vibe and everything.
Yeah, I agree. It's also got like non-stop action.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a bit of Turbo Killer in this track.
Hey?
I really feel like there's a bit of Turbo Killer in this track. You
Oh,
said
yeah.
it's Roller Mobster, right?
Yeah, but there's definitely a lot of Turbo Killer as well. For sure. The original inspiration was like Roller Mobster, but I definitely think there's like a lot of Turbo Killer in this too.
What are the songs anyway?
As we approach the ending here, look very closely off in the distance as much as you possibly can. Because there, in front of a portal, is the G-Woman again. Only very briefly, though. So that's her appearance here in the 80s.
Not a surprise. Once again, I fought through impossible odds and got out just in time to get whisked somewhere else. Guts telling me we're in the endgame now. There's no going back.
All these efforts have just been band-aid solutions. Where I'm headed now, it's a long way from Miami.
It's my favorite track in the Miami segment.
Yeah, mine too. So this track was based off of the kind of vibes I wanted off this one that are very similar to Dust from the Hotline Miami 2 soundtrack, right? That's the end of level music, basically, right? And then also there's a great kind of chill wave vibe to this as well. And we all know that RTBR runs on chill wave pretty much. When we really need to do some serious work, I have a playlist that has 7 hours of chill wave on it, and that just goes on for like the whole day. So
I have this track on my Spotify. I listen to it actually quite often. The soundtrack for this is for this segment at least that I know of is on Spotify, by the way, and other streaming stuff. So
yep,
go find it. God damn it.
Yeah, you better. I think Dimitron, you've uploaded it somewhere, right? Or have you uploaded it somewhere? What have you done?
I am currently working on a video similar to the one for my episode 3 inspired OST where it has like map backgrounds and stuff. That'll be coming soon.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So we're now on to the final chapter. Probably the most complex. But let's keep on rolling into Terminus, which is Half-Life 2 themed, of course.
As I arrived, I found myself in a new kind of war. A revolution. I was a century away from my time. A place I've never been. Seems it's as bad here as anywhere. The world and humanity, slayed by the bastards I've been fighting all this time. I don't have the element of surprise, but all I have is just my will, my guts, and my 38.
Okay. So we have proper normal color now, so this should be the most familiar, of course, of anything else. So, with this one, art passing this chapter, of course, was, also my missus has just said hello in the chat, so hello to my lovely wife. She, in fact, is credited in this because she was the beauty consultant for the G-Woman. She told me how to do the makeup. So, there we go. Anyway, so, art passing this didn't have, like, a challenge in terms of, like, There wasn't a lot to, like, figure out, like, how would you art pass this, I guess, in that way. Not like for the 20s, 40s, and 80s. But, of course, we wanted it to be art passed nicely. And so, the first person to art pass these maps was actually Flash, in his first art passing role of anything. Where he then went on to do Ravenholm for RTBR. If you wanted to talk about it a bit, Flash.
This was technically not my first childhood when it came to using Hammer and art passing in general, but it was the first official one. And this role was very memorable for me because it had so many little nooks and crannies that I spent weeks upon weeks diligently working on, trying to figure out why. Because I have a very, I don't know if it's unique, but I have a very involved way of art passing where every single area, hallway, and everything needs to tell some sort of story. And that requires a lot of time, and I spent a lot of time on this map in the beginning because I was just so invested and so infatuated with the idea of having every single little thing be as important as the thing that came before it. So that's what I tried to do. And I love Half-Life, so that was a match made in heaven for me to be able to work on this map. And, well, it came out the way it did. I believe that there had to be a lot of pruning of details due to the fact that I have this big problem where I make extremely beautiful, gorgeous maps, but they are horrendously poorly optimized.
I mean, you know, there was a bit of pruning required, but I think you can't really tell that any detail has been pruned. I mean, maybe you'd be able to, and I guess I can see places where I was like,
I can, but for the average person playing this, they definitely can't.
Yeah, like I'm looking and I'm like, I remember removing some stuff here or here or there, for example, but people still play this and go, this is some of the most detailed Half-Life 2 mapping they've ever seen. So, you know, imagine that. I guess, like I say, if anyone wants to see some of this stuff prior to pruning, of course you can with the older builds that I've made available on ModDB. Not ModDB, Steam even, in the Steam branches tab. Just bear in mind that the optimizations made to this map was so that it was like going to be relatively performant for a full release. I basically kept as much as I could. And then I even considered splitting this map into two because it was so pretty and I didn't really want to lose it. But I felt like after doing some pruning, it was probably possible. We do have this problem on RTBR as well, by the way, and I have had this problem before. I had to prune my own 80s maps after art passing them, right? It's very easy in the moment to just kind of art pass the crap out of something and not really think about it until the map is... Until suddenly you have to get the map in a state where it can be released to the public. And that's a very similar spot we find ourselves on RTBR a lot, and which I found myself, like I say, on the 80s actually a lot. Yeah, so you end up having to kill your darlings a little bit, but
yeah. But the biggest example of just a lack of experience when it came to the compromises one needs to make between beauty and the map actually running properly was that hole right there in the building, because the one you come out of at the bottom with all the little bricks. Yeah, that one. I remember that one being one of my first attempts at trying to have more detailed brushwork, and it was so There was a lot of cuts. There was a lot of very poor cuts just due to sheer inexperience. But I wanted the detail, and I wanted the fidelity, and I wanted the beauty. Of course, we eventually had to settle for something actually manageable. So a lot of the tiny intricacies were lost. But even with that, you can still tell that a lot of love went into this hole in the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. I got away with keeping quite a lot of these funky cuts by just turning them into funk LOTs, to be honest. So, which is
actually impressive how much you managed to keep.
Which is cheeky, and you're not necessarily supposed to do, but we do it on RTBR all the time as well. So that's mapping in 2025. People expect your source mod to look like it's not made for a game that came out in 2004. So you have to do crazy amounts of mapping. The engine gives up, and then at a certain point you have to go, well, we have to make it work somehow. So I guess we're just going to do a lot of things we're not supposed to. And so becomes stuff like turning loads of stuff into fake brush geometry so that you can actually get around it. Some things as a result don't actually have decals on them if you shoot them, but I think people care less about that than they would care about missing the detail, personally. So
We have a lot of the same issues on retail. We also have to work with Valve's horrible brushwork, so it's extra hard on us.
yeah, sometimes, you know what, we're modders. If we make a pretty end result, whatever it takes to make it work, right, is kind of okay at a certain point.
Yeah.
Also, a thing, that apartment complex, again, during my beginning of the mapping, it was a lot more involved and a lot more close to heart. So this apartment was actually modeled after my memories of an apartment that I used to live in 15 odd years ago. That's the inspiration that I took for a lot of the geometry and a lot of the buildings in this particular map, because it was still young and fresh, and all of my basically all of my experiences leading up to who I am today and where I've been and which places I've lived in all influenced my mapping, and this was a very large part. I can still remember the exact staircase and the way the downstairs has a kitchen area for some reason, and because it's Half-Life, I lived in the areas that were inspiration for Half-Life 2's level design, so this was, again, a match made in heaven, because I've lived through these areas, so it was a great place to take inspiration from.
Yeah. So I'm just destroying your kitchen here.
I mean, it's in a video game, and you'll never destroy the real kitchen that this was based off of. I don't know if it even exists anymore. It probably still does. It was a part of a huge apartment complex.
That's as far as you think, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
as far as I know, it's still there.
No, I'm saying as far as you know, I won't ever destroy your kitchen.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I mean, I could give you the address, and you could go do it if you want.
But, you know, nothing is impossible, just, you know, sufficiently improbable.
I don't live there anymore, so you can go ham.
Yeah, on whatever poor citizens are still there. Yeah. So around when Flash was mostly done with this map, pretty much, we actually just graduated him to art passing on RTBR. Because at the time I was basically making the assessment that he was too valuable to be spent on this silly little thing, which was ostensibly the side project, right? So at a certain point, if it felt like the resources would be better spent on RTBR, which was the primary responsibility, then they should have gone there. And of course, Flash did amazing work with Ravenholm, which a few other people later came in to help him finish, but he did most of it himself. So like, that's pretty impressive that like one guy did most of Ravenholm. And even the stuff which other people like me and RT and at the time a guy named SCP Gaming did, like, it was very heavily referencing Flash's work. And in fact, that's kind of what happened here. So although Flash did up to about here, I then did everything past here in the map, and the other maps then took inspiration and sometimes just took geometry and modified it, because it was so good that you could just lift it and modify it. And yeah, well, so it was a great reference point. So Yeah, so I've kind of tried to continue his work logically from here, and I hope it's relatively seamless so that it doesn't look like it was done by, you know, completely different person, more or less. I wanted to emulate the style where I could, and again, put in like little stories and that sort of thing, and imply some detail and some kind of like wider world, I guess, beyond it. Yeah.
This guy is actually the king of environmental storytelling right here.
Yeah, well, yeah, Flash. I have never met someone who has an equal
embodiment of these guys.
to Flash's ability to environmentally story tell, I guess. So, no, it's a fantastic reference, and will be a fantastic reference for all of RTBR in general. Just even if not like in pure style for a particular map, just how the kind of decisions made are very good to look at. As someone asks, how often do you switch projects to avoid burning out with doing one thing? To be honest, this was kind of the problem with Burton Equation. I did this too often. So RTBR is our main priority for most of us doing development on that mod. You know, this was the side project, I guess. And I had multiple side projects on the go besides this. So I had, at one time, I had 5 different mods going, pretty much. And I would swap between all of them, with most of the time being given to RTBR, and then using the other ones as kind of pressure valves to kind of... When I'd done a lot of RTBR work and I wanted to do something else, still do something productive by working on another project, because I really like working that way. The thing is, Burton Equation scope is pretty big, and it probably needed to be sort of maybe sharing space with at most one other smaller side project, as well as RTBR, but it was often sharing space with many more than that, and bigger projects too. Yeah, it kind of got to the point where like it was like, yeah, I realized last year I really wanted to get this done, and so I had to just kind of dedicate a whole year to it. So there wasn't a lot of swapping around last year. In general, though, I do suggest, I mean, you know, first of all, scope appropriately. But assuming you have scoped appropriately, I do suggest swapping and doing side projects and that kind of thing. I often found that after a while of working on Burton Equation, I'd really have a hankering to work on RTBR because I hadn't in a while, and I'd kind of miss it. And so it really put me in a great mood to work on RTBR. And then the inverse would be true, and I would come back to Burton Equation as well. And then working on other projects did as well. I think the problem was just that Burton Equation was too big a project to be the I'll come in and dip in and do a bit now and then kind of thing, right? You can do that if you have like smaller projects. So I think scope your projects to be more reasonable, but then yeah, that's totally an approach that works. So talking about this map again, we kind of so we're kind of taking some inspiration from Flash, although of course this is a very different kind of map. It's wider open streets. And because it's a much bigger map, we had to be a little bit more constrained with our detailing. So, initially a lot of the art passing in this map was done by Matt again. So, Matt, that's Matt 71490, I think. He did a lot of general art in the Half-Life 2 chapters and set like some examples in various places. Coral Lilac did a lot of stuff here. Coral Lilac probably did a bit more for this chapter than I did, actually. In the end, I was mostly focused on the 20s, 40s, and 80s, and she handled a lot of this chapter. So this was the most collaborative chapter in terms of mapping, I would say. And she was kind of targeting something like Street Wars for the vibe, of course. And then I kind of took her work and I elevated it again with strong reference to Flash's work. Try and add like just extra building detail and some extra details into corners. This map is the first map where I really learned how AI battle lines and stuff work, and I think you can really tell because all this entire map is built really, really well around like AI taking cover and pushing up on you and that kind of thing. And there's a cool sequence here with some citizens running by who get killed quite quickly, or sometimes do. There we go.
Sort of the first friendlies we went into, I figured.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't. I basically. I didn't really want to make the narrative more complex, but Zachary Fabrine and the G-woman implication, because obviously the narrative was not really the focus with this mod. But I thought indicating some friendlies might be kind of fun. And in general, I consider, in hindsight, whether like a sidekick for Zachary may have gone down well. But I don't really, I don't know how he would have fit into this current iteration of the mod, basically. So that's a really big what if that I don't think I can even really conceive properly. But yeah. Yeah, well, this map ended up being a very collaborative effort for the art pass and stuff, and I think there's lots of neat little details. This was another one that ended up being very hard to optimize. Here's an example where I just took some of Flash's work and repurposed it. It ended up being very hard to optimize because it was a really big map. So even though we aren't working to quite the same detail here as the first map in this chapter, it's just a much bigger map, so it ended up being a lot of work to optimize it as well. I guess we can talk about this a bit. Abby, this might be one of the last programming things we need to talk about. If you're still here, I don't know if you're still here.
No, she had to go.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just say then, this was pretty much the last programming thing to talk about anyway. Is that the pistol alt fire here is actually just the RTBR pistol alt fire, which is a 2-round burst on the USP. In RTBR we did this because there was a bug in a early version of Half-Life 2 retail release, where if you held down the right mouse button and then pressed the left mouse button, the pistol would fire 2 shots at once instead of only 1. It wasn't like an official function or anything, it was purely a bug. But we thought it was kind of cute, so we turned it into an actual thing with an alt fire, basically. Hang on, let me show this again. There we go. So, in Burton Equation, which is not ostensibly a beta mod, although that guy's standing in an interesting place. Although that does get a bit interesting, whether or not that's fully true in this chapter. Although it's not ostensibly a beta mod, I did like the idea of just reusing the alt fire here. I've always felt like it gave our USP and RTBR a little bit more use. So we got double damage, and we've also got a crossbow. There's a dropship that should come flying over in a minute. There it is. This was only my second time having a dropship. Oh, it's funny. It blows hopper mines out of the ground. I didn't know that. That's cute. Oh. Okay. Yeah, the dropship is basically just, it's a little hard to make work because you have to use, like, path tracks. It doesn't actually really move on its own properly. But yeah, it was interesting to do that. It was a suggestion of a playtester who said they felt that there should be something flying over during the Street Wars areas here. And yeah, I think this was a good suggestion, so...
Oh, I just noticed Eleanor said something in chat.
She did, yeah, I shouted her out. So this crossbow model was made original for this project, for Burton Equation, by someone named Green Alexander. And he did a really, really great crossbow model. It looks really awesome. Got a little bit of building flickering there, that's interesting. Did a really great crossbow model that I think comes together really nicely. And the sound design was done by me. I used some stock sound effects from online. But I also did some Foley from my Nerf guns, which I like I like finding excuses to make the Nerf guns have some function when it comes to doing the sound design. So I used them here and there in regulation as well, which is another mod I made.
Just for the record, this guy right here, okay, he is the Nerf god. This guy's arsenal is the best.
Moving up under
in
constant
Europe, as far
fire
as I'm
wasn't too
concerned.
different from
I got
the
a whole
trenches.
Nerf wall, dude. I love
These
Nerf.
guys could
It's
take
great.
the head off of a rat from a mile away. I'm not chancing more of these streets. It's dark down here, but it can't be anything worse than what I've already seen before.
Okay, so this map is very different. We have zombies. This map was almost entirely art passed by more or less just Coral Lilac, and then I kind of came in and I did a few things. Again, kind of just like slightly uplift it, I suppose. But she did a really good job with this map in general. We were actually at one point going to have Zachary Burton kind of have like kill lines when he killed some enemies. Kind of like what Bad Cop has in Ninja 2. And we did record some. In fact, I think they're still in the files. And older versions of this map, which again will be in older versions of this map, which will again be in you know, the versions on Steam that I released, do actually have him using the lines, although they're just fired with map triggers. In the end, we kind of felt like with all the added dialogue he gets, besides the monologues for like all the puzzles and everything, that he might be a little too chatty if he also talked regularly upon killing enemies. Dimitron, I've just realized I haven't really asked you to talk about the Half-Life 2 music yet, so why don't you do that here?
Okay, so the Half-Life 2 or Terminus OST, what the main side tried to like go for it was kind of like Half-Life 2 soundtrack, some Street Wars influences and stuff, but with an arcadey feel, and trying to fit the themes of like some of the maps, because I remember you showing me some early work in progress versions before I worked on the track, and I was like, I can work with this. So like with the first map, you know, I added in the sirens to sort of signal like, uh-oh, Zachary Burton is here, we gotta go after him, and second one was kind of meant to be a bit more slow moving and just like percussion to fit the navigating around the snipers. This one has some samples from Nova Prospect in it, and just trying to create like an eerie feel, but the action sort of amps up towards the end. So. And later ones, like the one in the next map, has some episode 2 kind of feel to it, but you know.
Alright, buddy. It's like he's sitting there like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, no, I really...
That's me after, never mind.
Okay.
That's me after, whatever, yeah, go ahead.
That's me after zacking my Burton. So I...
Well, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really like Dimitri on how you worked in Half-Life 2 samples. Like, they sound kind of like alternate timeline tracks from the Half-Life 2 soundtrack, right? And so it kind of really fits. Kind of really fits the vibe here of like it being like a weird timeline thing, right?
Thank you, that's what I tried to do.
And I'm sure, I think from hearing some of your tracks on Raising the Bar Retail as well, you're... I mean, they're static for some reason. I think you're doing something similar with the Raising the Bar Retail soundtrack, which it works really well there too.
Yeah. Yeah, showcased a bit of it in the last update video, by the way, so if you guys are curious, you can check out the New Year's update.
Yeah, Dimitron here, besides being a composer over here and a tester for RTBR, he's also the development lead of Raising the Bar Retail, which is a fan-made spin-off of RTBR, although we do support them a little bit. So yeah, no, you should go and check that out. It's not developed by the RTBR team, so you should direct questions to Dimitron and stuff, but there is they do have a channel over on the RTBR public Discord for it, so yeah.
One thing that I really liked about Dimitron's Half-Life 2 tracks is the use of some of the original sample packs
Yeah.
from the Half-Life franchise sort of OST across the games, like, you know, the Altered States and Methods of Mayhem. It's magnificent. That's what we try to do on our TVR as well. So.
Indeed. I actually directly sampled some RTBR tracks for retail, so some of your music entity.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful. It's awful. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah. Could be asking for this guy's autograph soon at some point.
Yeah. Somehow, Fabrine Castrucci returned.
Yep. Somehow. Somehow Fabrine is returned. That should have been alive, huh?
It probably should have been, but I feel like it could have gone a couple ways for how the public received it.
Somehow
Maybe.
Fabrine returned. I
Somehow
love that.
Fabrine returned. Yeah. Now this room is I really like this room. So I mean, Cora Lake's done a great job taking it, but this is even in the block out, I kind of intended this as like a room that would look great with a projected texture, right? To cast all the shadows down, and I think this is a very neat little room. We do a lot of this sort of thing in RTBR as well, right? And I have actually seen someone say that this room for them was the most RTBR-like room that they saw.
Yo, this is like Div 1.
Yeah, exactly. I've
Agreed.
literally done multiple art passes with projected textures that were like this. When we first got onto map base and we had the ability to use effectively as many projected textures as we want, right? We really were using them everywhere. I don't think we use them so much as we did in Div 1, where we were kind of a little unrestrained, perhaps. Because I was just pretty excited that we could use them. Besides that, I mean, I think we do still make good use of them. So here's a funny thing. Because of the way I implemented Infinite Sprint, which is basically just to say turning off Orc's power as something that existed, it's actually Zachary Burton does not drown. So canonically, Zachary Burton is a fish, I guess.
Hey, glib, glib, glub, glub, huh? Right, guys?
Very, very
I remember,
good.
actually, yeah, that's me.
Zachary Fishton.
I'm a fish.
Zachary Fishton.
I'll never forget the Metro Shark Gang.
Metro Shark Gang, yeah.
He's actually a X-Man mutant. He actually has the power to.
That's exactly right.
Know. Forgot which one of those guys does that.
Namor's not. Well, he is a mutant, but he's not an X-Men mutant.
No,
I don't know why I'm thinking about X-Men.
He's not an X-Man.
Dude, you got his foot. That was wild.
Did I?
You got his. Yeah, you just like. I think you nailed him in the ankle, dude. That was metal.
Watch out! He almost got you.
Yeah, we're not gonna fight all those guys.
You need a BFG for that one.
We'll see about that.
You got stuff behind you, brother.
I know. They're on their way. Whew. That panned out.
By the way, I just want to point this out. That room before with
Jesus
the pipes and
Christ.
stuff, that's actually a one-to-one
Those old
recreation
horror
of my
stories
room.
than he thought, but
Yeah,
God
that's
damn,
true. That's true.
those things.
I based it specifically off of
Science,
Entity's room.
bloodsuckers, whatever it is. I mean,
So got some
go down under
reference
fire.
images in
For
there.
Brain, his goons,
By the way, these are metal.
these bastards.
I love
These are
the.
metal.
I think
picks.
these are some of my
Goddamn
favorite illustrations that Adam did.
Same.
The one on the right is crazy, but that's my absolute favorite. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I wish he'd come on for this, but
Yeah. He's actually a professor of arts at university. So I think at the time he was working on Burton equation, he was doing this in Manila, I believe. And that was real cool. And then yeah, he ended up moving back to the I wanna say I think he went back to the US. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But yeah. So here the map is a little bit more contained, by the way, and you can see that our building detail is a little bit more as a result, because we could get away with a bit more in this map. The building detail is a bit more reminiscent of kind of the earlier detail. And then of course we have the time travel nexus here, which I think, along with the radio tower in the 40s, is probably the two most compelling visuals in general. So I think this came out really nicely. And of course here we have our very cool building, but also we have this kind of, we're using the portal storm here, and I think it adds a really cool vibe as well. So
It's the Nexus. No doubt about it. That place. That's the key to all of this. It's the key to all of this. It's the key to the story, to the script.
really important, the script says so.
The script writer says it's really important.
Cool, so this is the last rocket launcher you get. This is the AT-4. Based off the Half-Life 2 one, I basically just cleaned up the model and then textured it from new again. That's what's thing. So. I then gave all 3 rocket launchers an inspiring sound to help them all kind of have a little bit of individual personality. That was a cheeky dodge.
It's actually pissing me off.
Wow. This guy's very dodgy today. Come on, buddy. I know you can be clever. Whoa, hello!
Die, you tripod. This ought to do the trick. Just like Mom used to make.
And there's another one. Oh boy.
Each copy of the Burton equation is personalized. You know that?
Yeah, absolutely. Whoa! Hey!
That is scary, bro.
Bro,
That
chill!
actually scared
Chill! It is a
That
bit
actually
freaky.
got me, dude.
I just turn around the corner and he's just coming right for me. Damn. No, well, working with Striders was so fun for this, because we haven't obviously put Striders in RTVR yet, right? And so I haven't really gotten the chance to work with them yet, besides in Burton equation, and I really enjoyed working with them. I think we had a lot of fun to an encounter. They feel very intimidating. Like when one turns up, and I guess, yeah, like when it comes running towards you, I suppose.
It's scary, yeah. Because I think there's like a handful of times in Half-Life 2 when you're fighting it like up close, as it's like kind of like in where it's like crouching down a little bit, it starts like, you know, like speeding towards you.
Oh man, I haven't gotten him yet? Damn. Oh, stay here.
I must say with this track, it's kind of meant to be a mix of LG Orbifold and Spectre Speed.
Oh yeah. That's how ours
For the Strider vibes.
Wait, can you kick grenades at him?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't think, do grenades actually do something to Striders?
Wait!
Aw.
No!
I guess not.
That was almost a problem.
No!
Ah! Okay, that's fine. Right, so this, of course, is the famous beta gun, always known as the OSCW. So, there is a very... This is a very practical reason behind why this is an OSCW and not an AR2. And that is because at the time I made this mod, there were not really no ambiguity free-to-use, royalty-free versions of like high-quality remakes of the AR2, right? And so that presented some trouble for me. I think the only one that people were basically that had been made available was the one from Hunt Down the Freeman. Is ostensibly you can just kind of use it, but I don't, or you could. I don't know if that's still true. But I kind of didn't. I didn't really like how that one looked, so I was like, nah, I don't know. I don't know about that. So, also the hidden weapon here, by the way, it's very hard because you already have every single weapon. So I just decided to give you a fun one with the Tommy gun. Anyway, so yeah, so this is because basically I already had a high quality remake for RTBR of the OCW. And I just decided, okay, we'll just use that one. Because that kind of means that it was pretty straightforward to put in. I had a replacement for my, you know, assault rifle for the Half-Life 2 period. I don't know. Anyway, it gave me an excuse to use some of the functions that we have from RTBR. So, Abby, I think Abby, maybe Iridium did partake, but Abby and Iridium, at least, for RTBR did the functions for the OCW, and then I basically just asked Abby to port those in for a Burton equation as well. So it's got a normal primary fire that does fairly high damage. It's also got then, you know, a scope in as well, and when scoped in it fires less quickly but it does more damage. And then it also has an alt fire where it throws a grenade, since the SMGs don't have the grenade capabilities in Burton equation. So yeah. So here we go, entering the time travel nexus.
I have a feeling I need to go in there. Whatever it is.
It's the Nexus, dumbass.
Of course. So why doesn't Zachary Burton celebrate a detective? You know.
Yeah, no, he's a smart guy. He just doesn't know what he's in for.
It's true. It's true. Mahuba asking, why do you think the Combine should have had more guns? I guess you might mean in Half-Life 2 generally, like more varieties of gun than using human weapons. And I mean, I guess so. I guess just using whatever they had on hand is like one explanation, although I doubt Valve thought about it that hard, to be honest with you. Although clearly then for Half-Life Alyx they did think about it, because now you have got a shotgun which is clearly a Combine design. You've got an SMG and you've got the pulse rifle. So we do see more varieties of these things in Half-Life Alyx, at least. Into the portal.
I love this part.
He's going to the Nether.
The Nether.
So I just came back from the Minecraft movie. As a 25-year-old man, I
the big guns.
Yeah.
This time, they have legs. I'm not the only one tearing up this place.
That's probably the best line in this whole mod, by the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, this time they have legs.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Time's up.
And this shot, this artwork of Zachary Burton there on the right with the portal, that's probably my favorite artwork of Zachary Burton as well.
Detective Burton
again. It's so good.
You're at a place,
It's also a
buddy,
profile picture of
and you're out of time.
Yeah.
Ooh, you've got no pals to help you, no escape. End of the line. Come get me, detective. If you've got the stones, that is.
So a little under the weather for Brain. You okay there?
Bastard doesn't stay dead, does he?
He goes.
One of the most
Lakes full of
the
lava.
most rehearsed
Blocks
and redone
everywhere.
lines.
Yeah.
Flint and steel.
Yeah.
Lava
well,
lakes.
That line lives rent free in my head.
Oh yeah, the stones.
you've got the stones.
And you got the stones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean it was fun because at this point, you know, at this point I did know that Fabreem was going to be the antagonist properly, and so like I could begin thinking about it a bit more, and so we gave him that kind of like there's that modulation effect, and I thought it would be fun if it kind of came in halfway through the conversations. You kind of could hear it kind of almost switching on or whatever. I mean, of course, this is the Citadel Core logo, but it's using the Sigma instead, which is the logo used for Burton equation. As just like, you know, Yeah, that's the idea behind it.
Sigma, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it looks good.
It's a Burton equation logo in the. I'm beginning to get a bit on focus. Sorry, I've been talking for so long. So we're almost at the end.
Talk for you if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
So, hey guys, Growlick here. Is there like, can you tell us about the like I showed this a while ago, and like sort of procedural thing going on here with the mapping?
Oh yeah, that's right. Actually. Yeah, no. So when I started mapping the time travel Nexus interior, I was not yet all that confident, and I still have some misgivings, but I think I could do it a lot better now. I was not actually all that confident with making Combine interiors, and so, yeah, I'm not all that confident with making Combine interiors, and so I actually worked with 1UP made a tool called Nails, I believe, which could actually procedurally generate VMFs, right? And so what I did was I procedurally generated a bunch of VMFs, and then I slapped them all together, and I kind of fiddled with the interiors and stuff like that. In the end, I ended up having to do quite a lot of reworking of this map because the procedurally generated parts were decent as a foundation, but they needed a lot of work to really make look good. And I ended up slipping in some bits that we used from. Episode 1 of the Citadel interior. Like, this hallway is just lifted straight from episode 1, and then I modified it a bit. But I found that kind of helped tie things together. So you have the procedurally generated kind of parts like this, where like you've got some stuff going on, and it looks kind of a little bit like out there in terms of the arrangement of the environment. And then there's also, you know, areas that are a little bit more bespoke, like again this area here as well, with the time travel. And then yeah, I like the motif of literally zipping through all the periods, right?
You ought to know, boyo. I was working these guys long before you came on the scene. I had a good thing going too, before you ruined it.
Yeah, putting the Tesla Tommy here is just basically. So it was a very simple piece of feedback that they did for the 1.1, which someone said that the Tesla Tommy was their favorite gun in the game, and they were really sad they didn't get to use it again during this sequence right here. So I was like, oh, it's okay. As long as I don't give you any energy balls, it's fine. So you don't get any energy balls, but you do get the gun. So the main reason was I was worried about people using it to cheese for green, basically. And, you know, kill him in one hit for one of his phases. So I didn't really want people to be able to do that, but yeah. I thought it was alright. I mean, it also functions as OICW ammo effectively, so.
There's another interesting piece of music trivia here, but with this map it was a little challenging because we're traveling through different periods, so I had to keep the style kind of period appropriate, so I used like samples from old movies and stuff. And I might use a few that RTBR uses, T-Bot actually.
Oh, nice.
You can hear a few of them alongside the percussion.
Cool.
You know, when I saw those stalkers, dude, I'm like, you know, I think, just imagine them saying, damn, you need a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
something along
Did a
those lines, you know?
did a cheeseburger exist as a concept in the 1920s?
That is a good question. I don't know.
Man, we're done with this fucking thing and we're still thinking about, like, would so-and-so have existed?
We both saw the Great War, Detective. You came back thinking you could make the world better. I came back knowing the truth. It's a dog-eat-dog world. So I figured, why not make the world mine? It ain't gonna be long until we're at each other's throats again anyways.
A shaky screen.
Yeah. The AR2 maxes out its shaker at very near the end of its magazine in the code, but obviously the Tesla Tommy has a magazine of 50 instead of 30, so you end up having the maximum shake for a little bit longer. I'm just gonna Falcon Punch the next fool I see.
Falco Punch! Got this opportunity, should have put that in the game.
Ah! Missed it! That's fine. Got it.
Take that, you alien bastard.
Yeah. How about a little bit out of that, a little bit of what Mama gave you?
Go back to space, mommy, you alien bastard.
You mean you Martian bastards? You wouldn't have known the word aliens. There's a sleeper use of RTBR assets here, which I haven't yet pointed out, which is that for RTBR we made a lot of very generical combine brushwork things, which were then propered for detailing the depot levels, and I ended up repurposing a lot of those here. So that led to yeah, just to basically get some nice corners and walls going.
I recognize those corners, but I'm not. I'm only 99% sure those might be mine.
It's possible.
No! Okay, don't die.
I will not.
No!
I got one.
You better not get me killed.
There we go, cool. Fine, it's fine, I'm epic, don't worry about it.
You're an epic, gamer guy. Kralik actually, used to be a quick scope champion back in the day.
I totally did, yeah.
MLG gamer.
For real.
Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
You saw that no scope?
Oh, okay. I thought that might allow me to take cover, but I guess not. Pack that up.
Pack it in.
I'll tell you something of yours I definitely used here, Flash. I used the beam setup you have for the core in I think you did like a core in Depot 3? Question mark?
Yeah.
Oh, my first death!
Damn it.
Your Iron Man run has been destroyed. You have to start.
Alright, he's got to start from the beginning.
No, I think not.
really
The
hurt.
stream is just starting, folks.
This is very Half-Life-y gameplay right here with this puzzle.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of episode 1.
I should thank you for letting me bask in the neon, old Zaki. Beaches, cocktails, dames. I could have gotten used to that. Then you went and blew me up. They had to put me back together, Burton. Piece by piece. And some pieces weren't around no more. Now I ain't got nothing. No stinking warehouse, no skyscraper, ain't even got a dirty old bunker. All I got left is killing you. So how's about it? One more dance. Winner takes all.
Whoop! Damn.
I should thank you for letting me bask.
Oh, we're gonna hear him again.
Old Zaki.
I think it's a great. It is a great monologue. You really get the emotion out of
Then
this.
you went and blew me up. They had to put me back together, piece by piece. And some pieces weren't around no more. Now I ain't got nothing. No stinking warehouse, no skyscraper, ain't even got a dirty old bunker. All I got left is killing you. So how's about it? One more dance. Winner takes all.
Then you went and blew me up. I love how you did that line. That line is that presentation of that line is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted out of it.
It was very matter-of-factly.
Yep.
I was having a fun time, and then you exploded me.
Exactly.
For brain. Beaches, babes,
Coming
and
for you.
waves. Or dames.
Time to make this right.
Oh boy.
So there is a level transition here that did not used to always be here, but this is one of those level transitions you do because the map did not work. It was too complicated because after outpassing a chunk of 40s, 20s, 80s, and all the combine stuff in the middle, the map was just, it was at a limit, and I just could not get the map within that limit without massively, like, costing the actual map experience and, like, the visuals and so on. And so, yeah, there was, like, I really was like, oh, okay, I've really got to do something different here, so I guess I'm going to, you know, have to split it. And I really hate splitting maps to solve problems like that. I think you can usually solve those kinds of problems by scoping out map and optimizing it, but this is one of those times I just overscoped this map. It is the final map of the whole game. I did massively expand the scope from my original conception of it, even. So that makes sense, but yeah.
Give me all you got, Burton. No room for half measures now, boyo.
Here we go. So this boss fight works basically the same as one in the 1920s, except obviously for each era he has different weapons. Whenever he has the SMG weapon out, he plays the... Oh, hello. Dude, chill, chill! Wow. Whoa, 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 chill! Crazy Febreze, please.
You are
chill.
getting the soul sucked out of you, brother.
Unbelievable.
You brought a revolver to a minigun fight.
Actually frightening to see him come around the corner now that happened. I have a rocket. I need to get out of here, dude. Oh!
Oh my god, dude.
Challenging. Alright, let's try this again.
Give me all you got, Burton. No room for half measures now, boyo.
Alright, let's try this again.
Sometimes the old ways are the best.
Okay, there we go.
The fight between you and me, Zaki boy.
So obviously each arena is, you know, like ripping out bits of each period, which comes together in a nice way. And then you've got enemies which spawn, which have the period appropriate weapons.
Old killing, Burton.
And yeah, that works. But yeah, no, I think it came together. This boss fight was one I had to give a lot of thought and think about how it was going to be a decent enough kind of like denouement, I guess, for the whole game. The original fight here, which some people have mentioned, as you can see it on the old builds and stuff, was a lot more subdued, a lot less interesting, and yeah, I needed to really think of something else when it came around to here. And I think what came together is nice in the end. There's actually a projected texture in each of these. There's actually a projected texture in each of these arenas that uses the color of that era, I guess. So here it's pink, as you can see, and then in the 40s it's sepia color, in the 20s it's just white. So
the same motif as the 20s boss fight here. This is like a.
Oh yeah, this is Dimitron here, yeah.
Went well with the visuals, I think, although I could go back, maybe I would have had it sort of like it seamlessly transitions through the different periods, the period appropriate ones.
I think the whole thing comes together really nicely. And besides that, the other thing obviously to point out is that like this fight and also the other Fabrine fight, Dimitron basically set up the track in two parts, right? One of them is like the normal track, which has like an opening mostly, and then we transition to a another music track that's actually on all the time in order to make sure it lines up timing-wise, but basically acts as the looping component for the whole fight. So in this fight, in order to give Fabrine a little bit more kind of like tactic with how he works. Actually, I'll wait a minute.
Zachy boy.
Hi Aiden, we're streaming Burton Equation.
Press that button and we're both toast.
Yes.
This place. All we've done. All gone.
Could have been contenders for Brain. Could work together, maybe. So a whole lot of messes. You said it yourself. We both saw the Great War. Maybe you could have made this world better. Stopped another one. Or at least, stop this.
I'm my nature, Zachary. Can't blame a dog for its bite. When they shipped us out, they wanted killers.
You could have been better.
Nah, I couldn't have been. But you were. Too late to walk back now, detective. I wasn't lying about that. But maybe us being history, it's for the best. I ought to have died in that war, Boyden.
We both ought have. Let's end this then. Together.
So obviously that's that ending monologue is very important and kind of brings the story full circle of these two both, you know, again being veterans and going different directions. Yeah, I think both Entity and Flash did a really great job of that and bringing the emotion to that last monologue there. So if we take a minute to look at this Fabrine, this is basically the post, you know, screwed up Fabrine. So I made Clone Cop for NHP02 as well, right? And so I took some pointers from how I did him for how I wanted to do Fabrine, and then I kind of took it a bit further. So the gas mask, I kind of, you know, kit bashed a lot of Combine stuff. Example being, of course, the city scanner thing over the mask. The things that always went into the back of his head, that kind of always indicated there was something interesting going on there. But then we also have the kind of the bionic arm and also the bionic leg. And these were very fun to put together. I had to kit bash. I just basically, kit bashed loads of parts together from various things like man hacks and that sort of thing to make kind of like a bionic arm joint. And then he's just otherwise covered in loads of other combine stuff, and you know, he's pretty screwed up at this point. Pretty much all Fabrine has left is just killing Zachary because he's not got much else to live for. And then we get that one eye. This isn't like an actual Source Engine eye for those who would know the difference. This is just basically a flat bit of model because you can't make actual eyes glow in Source Engine, which is really unfortunate. But I don't think I needed the eyes anyway for this to work. But yeah. And then the face has some other edits besides that, but the mask covers it, of course. So, yeah. Anyway, that's that's that. So now we press the button.
No regrets, Zachy boy.
Well, end of the line. Everything led to this. For me to die doing what's right. I always knew this line of work would kill me. Sooner or later. This might be the terminus of my story. Might be the end of the world, too. But in my gut, it was worth it. Yeah. By God, it was worth it.
So, me and Entity spent quite a long time trying to figure out what his last words here should be. We landed on a couple of varieties, but then as we were kind of poking him through and trying to be like, well, what fits, what works, and not really hearing one that we really loved yet, we kind of came up with that. The, by God, it was worth it. And it seemed to all click. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it took a little bit to decide what, how to go out with a bang, or, you know, for the last few lines. But yeah, I think it ended up perfect. The equation's been solved. It's sort of like, 6 years of development kind of coming to a close, and like at the end, and me sort of trying to channel that into that, sort of last piece of dialogue there. So, it's a chapter coming to a close.
Yep, the last word spoken by Zachary Burton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was fun. That was good.
Yeah. Then there's the actual credits.
There's actually a different version of this track that was composed, but we made a more chill one because the original one was a bit too energetic. Didn't really fit.
It's a nice little track. Yeah, it's very chill.
The awesome team that made this.
I just want to tear up. Oh.
Yeah, there you go. So it was the whole team of people who were there, and then contributors as well as all the various royalty-free sources I got the stuff from. So we're gonna be here for a little bit as we wait for the credits to go through.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I sourced the royalty-free stuff from a lot of different places. A lot of it was under licenses that meant you didn't technically have to credit the person, but I credited people anyway because I just felt like that was more correct. Even so. So. Oh, I forgot to talk about this for the punches and the kicks. Yeah, the punching and the kick foley was actually... I do MMA a couple times a week, and I had a couple of people at MMA record... I had a couple of people at the MMA who I got to record some real foley of them hitting the bag, kicking the bag, and that kind of thing. So yeah. It was really good fun. And then yes, thank you to Breadman also, because when I first put this on Steam, he sat with me for about an hour and a half whilst we got Steamworks fully set up. Breadman being the lead dev of NGP Zero. Then you wake up in the office and there she is. So, the implication here is not that it's a time loop necessarily. And it's also not, oh, it was all a dream. I think the implication is probably he got sent back because he did his job that he needed to do. And at one time, I was leaving things open to do more, like more periods and that kind of thing. I don't think you know, at one time I had been considering that, and so leaving things open like that was like, you know, oh, you know, Zachary Burton could return, but I don't necessarily have plans to do that anymore. I think this works well enough on its own as a thing, and I don't think more is necessary. I think it does everything it needs to. So, but it was a real delight to make. It was a hard year last year getting it done, but like it was also very rewarding to really see it come together so thoroughly over the course of a year. And of course, I want to say again, thank you to everyone who helped get it made. Everyone who's in here and everyone who's not in here right now. You know, thank you, you know, Entity for being an amazing protagonist, and for you know, Flash for being an amazing antagonist, and this dichotomy working super well. Thank you both so much for that. And then yeah, you know, it's yeah. Well, that was the Burton equation. So I hope all you guys who were watching in the chat have enjoyed watching this and getting a look into how it all came together and stuff, and another one of these side projects. If you want to play it on Steam yourself and see some things I didn't necessarily talk about, I'm sure I think there's a few things I probably missed. Then yeah, you can just go ahead and download it on Steam. It's in the description of the stream. And yeah, well, I think that's all from me. So. Yeah. Cool. Thank you everyone then for watching. Thank you all the developers who sat in and provided their insights and how they did various things. And well, we'll see you guys in the next stream that we do. Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Burn.